Hey, what's going on, everybody? Sorry to keep you waiting there. Had a little bit of technical difficulties, so I think we got them all hashed out. Fucking Comcast, what do you expect? So, I'm here with a very special guest. You know him, you love him. This is Branden from JustTheGems, which I'm going to go ahead and let him introduce himself. Not that I have to. You probably fucking know him more than you fucking know me, but um, we'll go ahead and let him introduce himself, and then people like when I do an introduction, so I'll do my introduction next after that. So Branden, tell him a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Zoo, again for having me on for the second time. This is a great honor. I really appreciate it.
An
Yeah,
honor.
I'm Branden. I have a channel called Just the Gems on the YouTube, and we talk about primarily Japanese role-playing games. Once or twice, I tried to step outside of that niche, and the audience was like, "I don't think so, buddy." So I think we're gonna say that we're pretty much a JRPG channel. And I don't know, I'm a middle-aged man that decided to start having fun on the internet. So here we are.
Hey, I can't fault that, I'll tell you. So I guess I'll go with I'll just go straight here. So I am Mungan Zoo. I'm known affectionately by a lot of folks as Zoo on here now. I'm taking that shorter, snappier. And I am a strange internet ghost, the last cool kid on the internet, a dread harbinger, a physical caveman, not 6'1", a bully jerk, and a review maker and digital bartender, which is what we're doing here tonight. So people like that introduction, so I guess I'll start giving that at the beginning of this shit. So
Is Bully Jerk new? I don't know if I'm familiar with that
Bully
one.
Jerk Bully Jerk is a new addition. So that was
Okay.
that's a long story. That's yet another troll. But well, I wouldn't say this is a troll, but I got accused of being a little bit of a bully jerk on one of the discords I
Oh,
frequent.
okay.
Completely fucking unfounded, I promise you, as I'm sure anybody who's familiar with my Twitter antics would know that I would never do such a thing. But
Hmm.
in this case, I actually was innocent, though. So
Oh, good.
I think we've settled on cognac tonight. But the particulars of that are important because there's a million different fucking cognacs and they're all beautiful. So what cognac are you going on with right now?
We've got the 1840 Formula Pierre Ferrand, and I've never had this one before. Picked it up tonight, special occasion, and that's good. I like it.
Ooh, nice. I'm going with a pretty decent staple. I'm going with the Hennessy. It's the Hennessy XO is what I'm going with right
Ah,
now, which
that's
is
some good stuff.
very good. About as good as I'm willing to hit. Like anything beyond that, it starts to get stupid expensive.
Start to spend $1,000 on your
Not
bottle of
yeah,
cognac. Yeah.
can't do it. Can't do it. Maybe I was pricing Japanese whiskeys, maybe for a really, really good Japanese whiskey, like when
Hmm.
I'm fucking retiring. But other
Sure.
than that, nah, I can't do it. No, I've got a price range. I've got to stick to it because I gotta buy cigars too.
Oh, of
So
course. Yeah.
so alrighty, I guess we'll get started here. So in general, our conversation is fortuitous. We already planned this, but the timing is very interesting because you announced that you have become a trails guy,
I'm
and
a trails guy on the internet.
and so this was kind of the last straw for me because people in our little circle just can't seem to shut the fuck up about this series, and
Yeah, it's a
so.
sickness.
And
Hmm.
so I finally had to jump in, and so I would not call myself a trails guy. I am more of a trails boy. I,
Hmm.
I don't think you get your Trails manhood until you at least beat one game. So I started with
Yeah.
Trails from zero, and I guess we're starting there. So I guess my first question is, what made you choose to jump into the crowded space of being a Trails guy?
Boy, I mean, you're right about it being a crowded space.
Holy shit!
Which, if I was like looking to market myself, I would trying to be trying to come in at some sort of unique angle, but I'm not. I'm just here to have fun. So, um, I have loved the Trails games for a long time, and a big reason that I wanted to do, first of all, people talk about IRL life cares anything about trails, or probably even knows that it exists. You know what I mean? Like even the friends I have in real life here that play video games, they don't play these kinds of games, and that's certainly not trails, which is like a niche of a niche.
Right.
So I wanted to find people to talk with about trails, and I wanted to share my thoughts about it because I want to just talk about it, and my wife doesn't want to hear it. She's sick of it. Like, I got to give her a break. So, I put it here on the internet, and I hope that somebody listens. And some people have, and it's been great. I've made a lot of friends, not just from trails, from doing YouTube in general. Yourself included.
Yeah.
And it's been, it's been a lot of fun. And now, so anyway, all that to say, I did YouTube for about a year and a half. I did a little bit of trails content over that time, but just a dipping my toes in kind of thing. And finally this year, we're getting the newest game in the series this summer. And I was like, I need to just do it. I need to just get all the trails content out of my system. And it was a perfect excuse because I wanted to play through all the games again in order leading up to the release of the new one. So here we are. I'm a trails guy on the internet now.
Trails guy on the internet, and you're not the only one. We actually have a trails guy here in the chat, and I'm going to try a nifty new feature here. So we're going to spotlight him if it works. Let's try this. And there it is. Yeah, so Matthew Lynn says, woot, woot. And he says, best series. So
absolutely.
So you are not alone. We have yet another trails guy. Thanks for that, Matthew. And get comfy. We go long and we go hard on these, man. But welcome in. Welcome to the channel. I hope you enjoy. Hope you enjoy two drunk old men talking about video games, because that's what life's about, right? At least here.
Mm-hmm.
So now, in terms of, I wonder how much of an impact and how much of an effect, because you're right, like in real life, especially me, like in the sector I'm in, like, your friends really end up being your work friends. And
sure.
Outside of your significant other, like, she doesn't fucking play any of these games. Like, there's not too much overlap in the hobbies. I tell a story all the time that when people come over, like, I just recently was able to talk my way into having a couple of bookcases for all my Switch games. That way it's easier for me to find when I take my screenshot for my screen cap. I just got that done because, and to be fair, like, she doesn't have a bad point, because when the coworkers come over and we have meetings here at the house, what the fuck is this dork? What is all this video game shit all over this house? Like, she's not wrong there. So I finally got but I wonder how much of an impact the power of the internet has over the proliferation of some of these more niche series. I think that's a good point. Because we find each other, and that's the thing. If you had told me that I was going to make fucking friends on the fucking internet just 2 or 3 years ago, I would have fucking laughed. But here we are, and I got to tell you, I've met some really awesome people here. Normally, I would be pretty close to pulling the plug on this fucking thing. I'll be honest. I think last time I checked, it's like I'm 120 subs. We're getting pretty close to that Dunbar's number. But I think I'm here for the long haul, just because of the cool ass people I've met along the way. You, Jay, Mandy. There's so many cool people that are in this little neck of the internet. And I wouldn't trade it for the world. Really, really neat people. And they all.
Yeah, I feel like we really got lucky. Like, we really lucked out, because I know that some people don't have a great experience on the internet, and I count my blessings every day that, like, that I have such a good, positive circle around me, and I'm very appreciative of that, for sure.
Most people don't have a clue. If you go to some other areas of the internet, it is dark. It is dark shit, man. Just like if you look at like say like the old corner, I think it's pretty much defunct now. But if you look at like the old internet blood sports and shit, holy hell, man! Like, tear each other up. So this is much better. This is much better. I like talking video games much better. And what I like about you too, Brandon, is one thing I like about you, and I like about a lot of the folks in this sector of the internet, is I respect and I like people who aren't afraid to point out when I'm full of shit. And that is a very important thing, because it is okay to be wrong, and we're all wrong at times, and that's one of the
Mhm.
things that's cool. One of the things that I'm slowly but surely coming around to the fact that maybe I was completely incorrect on is the GameCube of all things.
Oh, interesting.
Slowly but surely coming around to that. Metroid Prime was fantastic. I am
Hmm.
told that I'm about to have my entire cranial system blown away by Mario the Thousand Year Door. So
Ah. Hmm.
overall, I'm pretty excited at this, and hopefully Trails is one of those things I've looked at and it's like, man, that looks really niche. And I got to tell you, since I've started Trails from zero, first thing I'll note is, goddamn, Crossbell is a big place. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm about 3 hours in, because I just don't have much time to play right now, because it's just, for some reason, we're crazy busy with business. But
Sure.
the times I've been playing, I'm still trying to find, like, every time I think I've entered the last district in this fucking city, there's another district in this city. The city is huge. And the city is full of named people, and that kind of scares me, because I'm
Hmm.
guessing that means that we're going to get to know these people and their problems intimately, as
Hmm.
this hapless fucking police officer that is going to go around solving their basic ass problems, at least at first. I'm sure that'll escalate. But the fact that they're all named, and the fact that this
Yeah.
city is so big, and the fact that when I click on that map and there's more villages and there's more places outside of Crossbell, gets me really kind of excited. Like, I'm getting
Yeah.
really giddy for this experience. The
Yeah. And
tutorial, yeah, go ahead.
the phenomenal thing about the NPCs in all the Trails games is not only are they named and have unique personalities, and
They're all named.
they have little stories that play out over the course of every game, and sometimes NPCs will show up in multiple arcs of the story. So you'll have NPC storylines that continue parallel to the grander story, right? So you can go back and talk to every single NPC after every story event, and they have something new to say. Like their individual stories are progressing all the time,
Oh,
and
wow.
you can completely ignore all of that if you want to, and you can still get a great story out of the main plot. But it's so interesting to see the amount of care that they put into just the most basic, like the thing that most developers of JRPGs considered the lowest priority thing, like the
Hmm.
NPC dialogue. Who cares? They say one thing, maybe they say something different at the end of the game. That's it. Who cares?
Right.
They're crafting hundreds of stories across the course of
Oh,
every
shit.
game.
Okay.
It's insane.
Well, I think I already know my supplemental, because I'm already what's coming to mind already, and it's probably more fitting that I know, because again, I don't know shit about this series, except that it is a series that is a long-term storytelling with some political intrigue thrown into the mix. That's all I know about it. I'm thinking I'll have to read War and Peace alongside this game.
Mm, interesting.
And the reason I draw that parallel is because, like, when I read War and Peace, this is back in the day, there's two books. There's only two books where I had to have a fucking notebook to keep track of characters. And one was War and Peace, and the other was um oh my god, Ulysses. Those are the two books. Like, literally have to have a notebook to take you. And that's not a bad thing, because those are absolute epics. And and even those basic characters have so much humanity put into them. Now, am I comparing Trails to War and Peace? No. Please note, if there's any literary nerds in here, not doing that. Obviously, not going to be a comparison. I say that now, but we'll see. Obviously, there's not going to be no comparison. But what I like to do, if anybody has ever read my writing or watched my actual videos, I have actual fucking videos now. I like to draw supplemental material from other places outside of video games. It's just kind of how I experience the medium. So I don't think there's a direct comparison in quality. I'm not saying that, and I have no basis to say that yet. But I do kind of get a War and Peace vibe from the way that this series tells its story is what I'm trying to say. But now you've experienced more of it to me. Am I off the mark in my initial assumption, or am I on? Have I hit it dead on?
I mean, I think that if you're talking about, you know, level of complexity, you know, I don't know that I would say that Trails is going to hit the level of a Dostoevsky. Like it's, you know, it's
probably a good thing.
It's complex. It's complex compared to its contemporaries. We'll say that.
Okay.
Certainly complex compared to, you know, your Final Fantasies or, you know, your Tales of series or any of those sorts of games. But I mean, I don't know. It's a little more, and I don't say this pejoratively, a little more accessible, if that makes sense, than a piece of classic literature like that.
Well, and again, so not a bad thing at all if that's the case.
Right.
You know, War and Peace is fantastic. Most people are never going to read it because it's dense as fuck.
Sure.
Also, fun fact: found out where Emily from Orbalology gets her name.
Oh yeah,
I get that now. I've always wondered. It's like, the fuck is that? And now I know. So that's where that comes from. So again, it seems like Emily is also a Trails guy. So, and speaking of which, the Trails guys are having a parade in the chat. So we're gonna kind of go to that real quick. Let them hijack. So the Mad Kaiser pops in to say, "I hear
Mad
Trails." Well, thanks for coming in, Kaiser. Appreciate it. He said, and I came for it. Currently playing Reverie, so he's way ahead of me. Way ahead. Antonio comes in. Welcome, Antonio. Welcome in, man. I just finished the first game, and man, that ending really knocked me on my ass, he says. So that must be Sky. I'm guessing it's Trails in the Sky.
Yeah,
so
Sky FC, yep.
Okay. And then we've got Phantom Cat Bunch says, hello, stopping in for a bit. What's going on, Phantom? Thanks for stopping in. Always good to see you, man.
Hey.
And see, Phantom is smart. He knows. He says, I'm stopping in for a bit because you motherfuckers can go all night. He knows that. He's been to enough of these now. 90s Handheld Gamer in. I'm not a cool kid who can talk about Trails. I'm not either yet, 90s. I literally just started Trails from zero. So I'm a rookie cop in Crossbell. I am a Trails boy. So I'm trying to get my Trails manhood badge, and hopefully we can do that. And okay, you're playing Zero too. Okay, because he says he's playing Zero as well. Coolness. So maybe we can compare notes. You know, that's always fun to be able to do that with somebody. And 90s, when are we gonna get you? We gotta get your ass on here, man. At some point, gotta get you on here to talk to. So hit me up on that. I'd love to talk to you. That would be cool. That would be cool as hell. Especially since you're also a Trails boy. That's cool. We're just so yeah. So I'm excited to see where this goes. So I understand that there's kind of a different every game or every arc also seems to have, and 90 says for sure. Yeah, definitely hit me up on that, man. But every arc seems to have its own view of the world, which is cool too. So where I'm at in Crossbell, it's you're kind of like a police organization. In Trails from the Sky, you're the Bracers, which I've touched on here. I've just met them. They seem to be they seem to have their shit together a little bit more than the Crossbell Police Force. I'll put it that way. So there's that. And then in Trails from Cold Steel, it's like some kind of an academy setting, kind of like a Fire Emblem of sorts.
Correct.
The setting.
Yeah.
Like a 3
At least initially.
Okay.
At least initially, I'll say that. Yep.
So I love how kind of the game is piecing together its story in little bits, and every arc gives you kind of a different perspective of a different area of the world. I'll tell you another thing. Like when I walked into the Crossbell Library and there is an A to Z section full of actual books you can read, I actually got Morrowind vibes from that. Like that's the level of world building we're talking about here. So I liked that. The tutorial. I don't have quite a grip for the combat yet, but I did notice to where you had to protect a couple of NPCs during the actual combat who could actually take damage from monsters. That was kind of cool. That was kind of a novel thing I've not personally seen before. So I don't know. I think I'm going to have a lot of fun with this series. And it seems like you're going to kind of have a core of these 4 members that you're going to really get to know. and I find that kind of cool too. I don't know if I feel like it's going to expand much beyond that in this particular game. Maybe it does, but
Yeah, that's one of the interesting things that Zero and well that the Crossbell games did that Sky didn't. Sky kind of had you gradually meet all these different characters as you
okay,
went along, whereas the Crossbell games say, here is your core group. Like you're going to get to know them, but you're going to get to know them as a group instead
right.
of getting to know them individually. You do get to know them individually, of course, as the story goes on, but it's kind of the opposite approach of what Sky did. Instead of you're going to get to know these folks individually and then see them together as a group, you're going to instead get to see them together as a group and then gradually get to know them individually. It's an interesting contrast in how they chose to handle character development.
I love how you can kind of tell a little bit about the party members, each of them, just by their rooms.
Oh yeah.
Like the detail is just there. It kind of reminds me a little bit of my initial play, and I got to get back into it. Final Fantasy VII, where there's this great moment that Super Eye Patch will points out in his Final Fantasy VII review, where he talks about like while they're in the holding cell, and you can see how Eris is just kind of laying there, kind of chill, whereas Tifa's kind of like tapping her foot. And
Mhm.
meanwhile, Barrett is pacing, and so you can tell a lot about each character just by that little interaction there.
Yep, for sure.
And it kind of reminds, like the details are they matter, especially in storytelling games. You know, it
Hmm.
matters to have that detail there. And I think Trails so far is knocking it out of the ballpark here. So we'll see where it goes. But now you've got some plans for Trails too. Now you're going to be making some Trails content, and the reason I want to talk about that is because anybody expecting Trails content from me does not know how I do my workload. Like it's going to be a long fucking time, guys. Um, it's going to be a long time. I've still got a Batman Arkham Asylum to write. Which is I've got Persona 5 is almost done. I beat that at the tail end of last year. I'm just starting on the Xeno 2, putting my thoughts down about that. And I've got the inevitable Zelda and Mario Wonder that will eventually show up. So there's going to be a
Mm-hmm.
lot ahead of this one. But Brandon is actually working contemporary right now on Trails content. So tell them a little bit about your kind of your roadmap for the Trails guy arc.
Yeah, for my big Trails guy arc. So yeah, my the core of it is going to be a series of reviews, of course, of each of the games in the series. So those will be coming out every month or so. I need to give myself a little bit of runway because these are big, long games. I don't want to like get caught up to myself and then have to make everybody wait for months. Um, so in between that, I'm going to be producing additional content. Like I have a plan to do some tier ranking videos where I can kind of talk about the characters. Somebody in the comments I'm sorry, I don't remember who it was right now. But when I do the video, I'll make sure to mention you. Do a video on the different dishes, the different food that you can make, and how it differs between regions, and how it says something about the different regions of the world. So yeah, these are all the things that I'm thinking about, and like I said before, I'm very open to suggestions because I'm not planning months ahead at this point. I'm a couple of weeks ahead of where I want to be. And my intention with this is I'm not replacing any of the regular content that I make for non-trails, just general JRPG stuff. I want to continue to put out videos for folks that don't care about trails. Like as crazy as that sounds to me, there are people out there that don't care about trails. And like, you know, to each their own, I guess. But so I want to still, I don't want to just be the trails guy, and then everybody else is like, well, forget it. He's pivoted to trails, and I'm not interested. Because
Right.
there's plenty of other stuff on these shelves that I love a lot. So I'm going to keep talking about that stuff. So I'm greatly increasing my workload for this hobby. Is it still a hobby if it's this much work? I don't know.
Oh,
But it's
sure,
fun.
sure.
So
Yeah,
so
I mean, some folks build boats and bottles. That's a fuck ton of work. So,
that's true. That's true.
like, yeah, I'd say you're good. But yeah, I'll tell you, I didn't expect to like when I started, it was just talking over bad screenshots,
Mm.
and then gradually, between OJ and Jay, got me to just try it. It's actually pretty chill. It's a chill process editing Jay from Cold Nights. And finally I did it, and it wasn't as hard as I thought it was.
Mm.
Being an old man and being technically shit as I am was not as hard as I thought it was. So that was kind of a game changer. Now the videos take a little bit longer because it used to be I could write something, throw it together in one take, and it's done. But have a little bit of
Mhm.
newfound respect for how much fucking effort y'all put into this shit.
It can be time consuming.
Damn,
That's true.
it's a lot of
The
effort.
most time consuming part for me, honestly, is the game footage cutting. Like I record almost exclusively, unless I'm using a trailer. I'm using my own game footage, so not only am I playing and recording the game, like the editing of the game footage to me is the hardest part. The rest of the editing process I find really relaxing. Actually, like I enjoy that quite a bit.
Yeah, it was OJ gave me that tip. Basically, he said until you can record your own gameplay, which he said eventually you should, but he said make sure you can use trailers. He said make sure it's promotional material only. He said
Mhm.
what you don't want to do is you don't want to grab other gameplay because at that point that's someone's work. And I think that's
Where
there.
they, I think, kind of expressly set out to provide a lot of different game footage for people to use. So there's that option as well.
Oh,
But
what
primarily,
was
if
that
I'm
again?
not,
Because we lost you for a second.
oh, did we? Sorry.
Yeah.
Um, I was saying that there are some channels that explicitly kind of set out to allow you to use some of their gameplay footage. I was thinking of in particular, I don't know if they're still active, but 10-minute gameplay is the channel.
Okay,
I
so yeah,
believe that's what
basically
it's
just give them
called.
a credit, and then you're good.
Yeah, you put a credit
Okay.
in the description or whatever.
Oh, cool.
And
Okay.
I think their like goal was to let's create a bunch of footage for people to be able to use if they don't have access to the game or
That
whatever.
is cool as shit.
Yeah, so there's some resources out there for non trailer footage, but like generally if I'm talking about a game that's out, I probably have it, so like I'll grab the foot, you know what I mean? I'll just grab the footage. It's easier because I know what I need to get anyway. So
Yeah, and eventually I'm very excited to learn how to do that. I've got a capture card. It's just a matter of trying to learn how to use it, and then that's going to be exciting. And I'm actually captured some for Breath of the Wild. That's probably going to be the first venture into that, and so
nice.
that'll be leveling up the content again gradually. But yeah, putting a lot more into this than I initially thought I would because it is fun. It's actually genuinely fun.
Fun.
It
Hmm.
is fun. It a lot more fun than I thought it would be to edit videos out. So missed a comment, so I want to throw that up. So Matthew Lynn says, laugh out loud. Wait till you get to Arabonia in Cold Steel. Heimdallr might have been built on a hellmouth. Again, you're about 9 levels above where I'm at, Matthew. So I'm gonna take that's bad, and we'll just leave it at that.
He's not wrong. He's not wrong about that.
That sounds bad. Phantom Cat Punch says, ha ha ha. He says, so he's laughing at something. And then 90s Handheld says, just saw Brandon's video the other day where he said he wants to be known as a trails guy. He's looking more like one already. So yeah, the trails guy. You can begin to discern it literally from the appearance once the trails guyness sets in enough.
Yeah.
So
It starts in the brow. It starts in the brow and it kind of spreads out across the face.
now you'll never know with me. You'll never be able to tell with me because I'm just a fucking ghost. So now, so yeah, it's that said. I think that pretty much covers trust because again, I'm just not far enough into it. But eventually, I look forward to kind of charting my progress, and there'll be a full review eventually. But other than that, yeah, what's going on? Did you see? I guess you saw. I guess we might as well talk about the 9,000-pound blue whale in the room, which is a Pal World.
Oh, I sure did. You can't help but if you've been on the internet in the last week, you are sick of Pal World. Even if you like Pal World, you're probably sick of Pal World at this point.
Well, I'll tell you, it's so funny watching some of the people I follow, like MVG Dave. Like, there's so many people that are just like, see you on the other side. They just muted it. They did what I did to fucking Switch 2 talk last year, where I'm just like, I've said my piece on Switch 2. I'm done with it. Mute that shit. That's where they're at with Pal World now. A lot of peeps, and I get it, man. Like, I get it. But here's the thing. Like, I think I'm far less interested in Pal World the game, and I'm far more interested in the impact that this is going to have on gaming as a whole. I guess that's where my interest lies. So the game itself, to me, I hear it's fun, but the
Mhm.
game in and of itself is not interesting to me. It just looks like Ark Survival evolved with like Pokemon buddies. Is basically what it
Sure,
kind of appears like to me. Now, is that
sure.
something I would play? Probably not, given the backlog I have on the Switch. And then there's always
Mhm.
Morrowind fucking looming in the distance, like also calling my attention away from that backlog and making sure I never get any progress done. So
Right.
yeah, it's going to be hard to fit Pal World in, but I got to tell you, the thing with Pal World to me is it to me it seems like it has the potential to be a disruptor. And I don't necessarily just mean Pal World itself, because I don't even necessarily know if Pal World is going to be the game. But Pal World is certainly a symptom that there is blood in the water regarding the Pokemon series. I do think that. You've had Tim Tim, now you've got Pal World, and the big impact that Pal World's going to have is it is strongly suspected that this game was generated largely using AI assets. And artificial intelligence, I've been telling people this not just in gaming, but for a long time. I've been talking about the fourth industrial revolution. Whereas the previous industrial revolution was a revolution of the body, this revolution is going to be a revolution of the mind. And it's going to cheapen intellectual labor instead of just cheapening physical labor. And so that's going to have massive impacts. And I was saying this even 5 years ago, and people said I was full of shit, where I used the example of a chemist. So you have a chemist, and the chemist normally would be a very high paying position, right? And because the chemist could do specific formulas that your average layman couldn't do. But now here comes artificial intelligence, and here comes the automation revolution that's going to automate that job. And so a vast majority of chemists will be replaced. Now there'll still be chemists because they still need chemists to do the jobs that the machine can't do. You still need the chemist to do the out of the box thinking. But 95% of chemists will be gone, and the only chemists that will remain will be the absolute peak elite of their field. And that's kind of where things are going, not just with chemistry, but with teaching, with other industries, and now even video games. And of course, people that thought it wouldn't come for video games, of course it's going to come for video games. Of course it's going to come for video games. Like, you honestly, if you have you never watched a fucking Jim Stephanie Sterling video, do you not know what kind of pricks run these game companies? Like, you had to know. Is kind of my thing with people. Like, you had to know that this is one of the most predatory industries when it comes to that kind of thing. So I'm actually shocked that people thought this wasn't coming. And it's really going to depend on a few things. And so one of the things I had to dabble in when I invested in Nintendo Wii back in the day with Nintendo Switch was Japanese business law. And there's a few things that are getting twisted here in terms of I and this also comes into the larger debate with Iwata. So Iwata often gets touted as being the guy that cut his own salary in order to avoid laying off employees. Right now, that's technically true. He did do that, but there's also some other reasons beyond that why he did that. One of the things that he did, the reasons why he did what he did, is because in Japanese law, it's actually extraordinarily difficult to lay people off. So
Correct.
in order to lay people off in Japan, so I don't want to. So one of the things I want to stay away from. I do think Iwata was a good business leader, but I'm not a fan of great man theory in general. It's just not
Sure.
something I'm a fan of. So I like to explain kind of the background intricacies of why Iwata may have chosen to do this. So he did this. Now, you have to basically be able to prove that you are heading toward insolvency or bankruptcy in order to lay people off in Japan. Now, I will tell you that their position with people forget that the 3DS was on fire at this time. It was a
Mhm.
burning platform, and the Wii U was stick a fucking fork in it like early on. So Nintendo was in very dire straits. Now they managed their money well. So were they close to a bankruptcy? Were they heading toward insolvency? I don't know if I'd argue that. But I think that Nintendo being the company, the prestige company that they were, if they needed to, probably could have made the argument that might have at least been able to put that on the table. He chose not to do that. So he gets credit for that. Even more powerful than the Japanese business law around that is the social stigma and the societal stigma in Japan that goes around that goes with bankruptcy or insolvency and goes with losing your job.
Mhm.
So it is an open secret in Japan that nobody loses their job unless you absolutely have to, because it's essentially a public death sentence. Um, whether it's a layoff or especially if it's a firing. That's why when Gumpy Yokoi was fired over the Virtual Boy, it was that was a shock. It literally shocked people to their core. By the way, I'll argue to the death that that was actually a wrongful firing, and that the actual person who should have been fired there was not fired. But that's a whole other discussion for another day. But long story short, there are reasons that specifically in Japan protect people from the mass layoffs that are happening in Western game development. It's not
Right.
just great man theory that Iwata was a great man. You can see it similar with Capcom in the mid 2000s had a similar crisis, and they also chose to cut salaries rather than lay people off. It's a very common move in Japan because of the shame of financial insolvency paired with the actual political law on the books in Japan. So
Sure.
that's
Mhm.
gonna so that's going to protect a lot of Japan from some of this disruption. But in general, I think that AI is going to be a hugely disruptive force in the industry. For one, the disruption is going to hit these companies. These large companies are going to use these tools to essentially lay off thousands and thousands of workers. It's already starting. Now, that seems like a black pill, but it's not, because I'm going to give you a little bit of the positive pill on this as well. The fact is that because these tools are cheap and widely available, there's nothing stopping the artists that are suddenly laid off from using the same tools to supercharge and simplify the games making process to create more indie games and more indie studios. And the example I want to give of this is a mod project called Tamriel Rebuilt. Tamriel Rebuilt right now is a project that's been in existence for over 20 years. It actually predated the Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind. Only recently has Tamriel Rebuilt supercharged its process, and that's because of new tools like AI. That's new tools like Blender, development tools to create new assets. All of these tools are becoming widely available and democratized, and it's going to blow gaming wide open. Now, this may mean that gaming may not be the lucrative industry that it once was, because anybody and everybody can become game developers. But and you actually see a lot of artists, and I don't fault them, but you have a lot of artists that are yelling about this, and I kind of see it almost as the horse rider yelling at the car driver in a way. Because what they don't understand is, yeah, sure, you're not going to be able to do this for a living anymore, but those with the passion that want to do this are still going to do this, and they may make the next hit as an indie developer, and they may make more money than they make as an artist at that company slaving away for a salary. So I just want to point out that there's huge negatives, and it is going to be disruptive, but with any disruption comes massive positives that people will take advantage of, and it's going to make a lot of people rich, including people that maybe some of those laid off people. But Brandon, what's your take on that? I've old man rambled enough on it, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it feels a little bit like a Black Mirror episode, right? Like,
Yeah.
it seems like they want us all to be consumers. They want us to increase our consumption, but they're constantly coming up with ways to decrease our ability to consume. Our livelihoods. We need our jobs to have our money to consume the crazy stuff that we consume. Um, So I don't have a solution to that problem. But I think you're 100% right that like this is inevitable. This is going to happen, short of some stringent AI related laws and regulations coming out of Europe, because it's only going to happen in Europe. Um, Short of anything like that happening, like, yeah, we're going to continue to see massive layoffs from big companies. And I think, you're right that these developers that have been displaced are going to have opportunities that they wouldn't have otherwise had. Um, the problem, the short term, I guess also long term problem is that not all of them are going to be in a place post layoff to take advantage of those potential new opportunities. So the human cost is going to be far greater than whatever we might gain from the artistic side even. And I'm thinking like the indie developers are going to be creating the more artistically minded games, and you've got your EA pumping out their AI generated shooters or whatever the case is going to be. So I worry about the human cost. I also, to me, and I don't know if this is controversial or not, but to me, a company that has to do layoffs, that feels that it has to do layoffs, um, that's a failure of management up to the highest level, right? Like if I'm an executive director. I'm executive director at the company I work at. Um,
Oh, okay.
so
Gotcha.
if my company ends up in a situation where I have to lay people off because we're not making money we need, or whatever the case may be, that's a failure on my part. I haven't done a good enough job to ensure that we're making the kind of money we need, that we're growing the way that we need to. If I'm laying, so in my previous job, I worked at Groupon in Chicago, and I ran a couple of departments in Groupon, one of which was the deal qualification department. And we were a team of 50, I don't know, 50 something, 55 people. And we needed to decrease the size of that team. Well, rather than lay people off, I worked to increase productivity so that we got more done. And as people left, because naturally, especially in a company like that, people are going to leave. I made sure that we still were able to keep up with the work, so that naturally over the course of about a year, we went from 50 something to 30 something, which was the right size for the department. And we didn't have to lay anybody off, right? We just didn't backfill when people left, and we were able to keep up and everything was fine. Maybe that's not a great example because it's one department, one small department in a giant company, but I think the principle's kind of the same. If I'm running a company, if I'm running EA, if I'm running Microsoft, why am I blanking on who just laid off? Blizzard? Did
Yeah,
they just lay off
basically they almost all of Blizzard. Yeah.
1,900 employees or whatever?
After acquiring the company.
Right. That's failure of management at up to the highest level. Like that was stupid. Like you have not operated your company well if you need to let go that many people. And if you're purchasing a company and you see these people as irrelevant or redundant, like then it's a lack of imagination. If you ask me, like you've got 1,900 talented people here. What could you do with them? You could put them on something incredible. And your choice instead is to take the path of mediocrity and say, well, we've got somebody that does art assets over here. We don't need you. You're gone. I don't know. It's the path of mediocrity to continue replacing talented artists with AI or whatever. Like that's the thing. Like you brought up Pal World. It looks interesting. It looks fun. Or I should say, it sounds fun. People have described it as being a very fun game. That's great. I have no problem with that. But looking at some of the pals side by side with the Pokemon that people are claiming they ripped off, and it's pretty obvious. Like, okay, they fed a bunch of Pokemon into an AI.
Absolutely obvious.
Had it come up with original creations. Like that's just mediocre. I'm sorry. Like, the game might be fun, but like the soul behind it is just pure mediocrity, and I'm not interested in that. Even if that was the sort of game I wanted to play, which it's not, and no shame to anybody that enjoys that kind of game. It's not for me. But I see that and I just like, that's just mediocrity. I'm not interested in that. There's so much stuff out in the world for us to consume. Why would I don't know. I'm not going to choose to consume something that looks mediocre. Like, I want to see the heart and the soul of the artist behind the thing. Like, that's what interests me the most. I don't know. I'm rambling now.
Trust me, as one who rambles, I think you made pretty cogent points. There's a lot to say here.
There is.
My friend V, who been on a couple times too, and not a content creator, just a good friend who I've known forever that plays video games. My friend V asked a really interesting question as I went on my AI monologue, and that is, what happens when there's no more art to cannibalize? Because if you disincentivize art, which was her point, to the level to where nobody can really make anything, whether we want to or not, we are in a competitive capitalist system, and that
Right.
means we need the money to survive. And if we can't make the money from doing this, what happens when nobody's making the art and when there's no art to cannibalize?
Mhm.
And I actually have the answer to that. I'm going to do a quick screen share here, which is another nifty feature I'm slowly but surely learning as we do this. So we're going to do a screen share real quick. I'm going to share my screen. I want to make sure you can see this, Brandon, when I do this. And we are going to do the share the 4 stages of simulacrum. I think that's the one I want. Yeah. Okay, can you see this?
Looks like it's loading. I don't see it yet. There it is.
Okay. Well, that's not the one I wanted. So let's try this again. So we're going to stop streaming. And we're going to try this again. Screen share. And there's the one I want. Okay. There. Let me know when you can see that. Can you see it, Brandon?
No, it says that you're sharing your screen, but now it's not displaying the window.
Oh goodness.
Maybe.
Well, let me put it in the chat. We'll look at it in the chat here. Copy image, and then we'll just stop sharing, because anytime I try to do anything technical, that's what fucking happens. So I'm gonna post that in the chat below, and then we'll just.
Okay.
There we go. Okay. So 4 stages of simulacrum. Okay. Stage 1. Initially, the sign image of representation is a reflection of basic reality. Right. Stage 2. And you see where this is going. The sign makes masks a basic reality. The image becomes a distortion of reality. Stage 3. The sign marks the absence of basic reality. The image calls into question what the reality is and if it even exists. Stage 4. The sign bears no relation to any reality whatsoever. It is its own pure simulacrum. That's what's going to happen. That's what's going to happen.
I love it. It's interesting. When the topic of like what happens when there's no art comes up, made me think. I host a podcast called Four Guys on a Train. It's not video game related. It's just comedy.
Shoot me that. I'll link it in the description at the end of this chat. That way people can see.
Sure. Yeah. Help me remember. I'll send you a link.
Yeah, but because I wanted to have access to all your work. So.
But one of the games that I brought, like a sort of an improv game, not really improv game, but was I took famous phrases, famous quotes said by famous people, and I ran them through Google Translate, and I translated them to, I don't know, some Chinese, Mandarin or something.
Right.
And then I took that Mandarin translation and I ran that through Google Translate into like Russian or something. I don't remember exactly what I did.
Right.
And then I took that Russian translation and I translated it back to English. And as you might expect, without me even saying anything, it was a mess. It was like you could see that a little bit of like what if you knew what it was originally, you could kind of tell what it was supposed to be, but it was bizarre nonsense because it had been fed through the machine so many times.
Yeah.
And so the game was the other guys in the podcast had to figure out what the famous expression was and who said it. But to me, that says like that's exactly what AI art is going to become. When you run out of art, they're going to start feeding the AI art back through the AI, and it's going to get more and more. I don't know. It's going to degrade more and more over time.
Disjointed and completely separate from reality, to where it will eventually become its own simulacrum. That's what's going to happen. And by the way, that's not a good place to be, folks. That is not a good place to be. That has absolutely dire implications on human consciousness. So I just want to, I'm not trying to give you the big brain Rick and Morty take here. I'm just trying to explain how bad this can get. So there's that portion of it. And Guy Debord had this. Are you familiar with Guy Debord?
No.
Great situationist thinker. And he wrote a book called The Society of the Spectacle. And he had a great saying on there. He said that we are replacing living with owning, and we are replacing owning with the appearance of owning.
Wow.
He said this in the 60s. So yeah, absolutely ahead of the curve, as are a lot of these peeps, you know. And like, to bring it back to your comments on a failure of leadership and a failure of imagination. So I'm also in executive leadership. And I actually navigated 2 crises with 2 different organizations, which I won't name because I don't want to dox myself. But I will tell you, the first one we did, we had a crisis because we had a lot. It was becoming very red ocean, and there was a lot of competition. This was retail grocery, okay, and already a very red ocean. But we had multiple companies moving in. And so we had to find, and otherwise we were facing kind of that scenario. We had to find a way out of it. And the way I found it is, and I've told this story on air, I think a couple times, but I'll tell it for the folks here. You can listen to it again. It's a fun story. But basically what we did was we realized that there's in the state of Illinois, there's an entire group of people that are forced to leave money on the table that nobody was picking up in retail grocery. This was people who used food stamps or EBT. And who was having to leave that money on the table? The restaurant industry. Not the grocery industry, the restaurant industry, or your hot delis or your hot bars in your delis. The reason for that is in Illinois, you can't buy hot food on EBT or food stamps. But, and this is what we came up with, what if you weren't buying hot food? What if you were buying like cold catfish fillets? Or what if you were buying a pork steak in the service meat counter, and then we cooked it as a service while selling it as that raw food? So it's weighed up as a service meat item, but then it is cooked as a service for those people. And we made so much money doing that. We were positioned in particular in poorer neighborhoods in a couple of these stores, and it saved the stores. It literally saved the stores.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing, like you think that you wouldn't normally think of it, but yeah, people who are on EBT and food stamps, they want a night off from fucking cooking too.
Sure.
Absolutely they do. But the restaurants were forbidden by law from enabling that. So that was crisis number 1. Now crisis number 2 was kind of at the tail end of 2012, 2013. We had kind of another little mini crash. Not really like not a recession full on, but kind of another dip. And one of the things we did, and this was another company we did, is I transitioned us from a shareholders model more to and I helped transition us to a workers cooperative model. Now, why does this matter? To kind of give people, to kind of define my terms for people in the chat. So if you are in a shareholders model, right? If you're in a shareholders model, then what that means is that when the money, when you take all the profits, you take all the money, and then a board of directors decides how that money is spent, essentially, with your tradition. It's your traditional corporate model. So what are some of the things that they'll do? So one of the things that they'll do is that they'll give it to the shareholders. They could buy their own stock to prop up their own stock. They could give it to themselves, and or they could give it to employees. What you don't often see in these kind of things is you don't see them put back a rainy day fund. That never fucking happens. You rarely, every once in a while, they'll use it to expand business operations, but typically it's one of these other shell games that happens to. Now, with a worker cooperatives model, who decides where that profit goes? All of the employees. All of the employees vote on it. Now, what you will find, now you may think, well, man, that sounds like chaos. But if you look up a company called the Mondragon Corporation in Spain, you'll see that actually, in general, these worker cooperative models tend to be, they tend to be more reactive, and they tend to be lighter on their feet than these large corporate behemoths that have to answer to a board of directors and shareholders. And so one of the things that is a hobby of mine, and the company I work for isn't a worker cooperative now, but that one was, and it's doing very well still. And so kind of a hobby horse of mine is looking at saying, hey, have you thought about a worker cooperative model? Because they tend to be very, very light on their feet. They tend to be able to work change, and they can do things that a board of directors would never do because they can't do. You can't tell shareholders that they have to eat a loss so that people can keep their jobs. But a worker cooperative, where they're shareholders, but they're also voting with the workers, could say, hey, we're all going to take a salary cut so that we can all stay employed. And that's the kind of
Right.
things they can do. But what's your thoughts on that? Have you ever, like being in executive leadership, have you ever looked at worker cooperative models?
I haven't myself, because my previous management role, like I said, at Groupon, is a behemoth of a company that would never happen. And the
Right.
company
No,
I'm
I
at
hear
now
you.
is pretty small. So, but I love that. Like, I think that makes so much sense, and I think it works in part because the people making the decisions, the workers, are
Mhm.
the people that actually see what's going on. Like, if I present to my board of directors for my company, they're seeing the data, they're seeing the charts, they're maybe commenting on the trends, but they're not seeing what's happening on the ground. They're not really experiencing it. And to ask somebody to make a decision about something as complicated as a company with only having that, narrow slit of a view into what is really going on it's
Mistakes get made.
nonsense.
Mistakes get made
Yeah,
all the time.
they get made big time, and uh, you know
uh,
and there's it's up to people like us that communicate with these board of directors, but
mhm.
also are there on the ground to try to convince them that we know best, because we do, like, we see it. But
Certainly no better than most boards do.
yeah, no,
Yes,
I'm very much in favor of that idea. Like, it makes a ton of sense to me.
it's good. It's really good. You should check out a company. I'm not sure if you have their products. Well, yeah, you do. You're in Illinois. Dave's Killer Bread.
Mhm. Okay.
Dave's Killer Bread. Not didn't work for Dave's Killer Bread. So full disclosure, didn't work for that company. They're a cooperative, and what they do is they noticed that there was a group of highly motivated, often very skilled people who couldn't get access to the workforce. And of course, they're talking about inmates, felons.
Mhm.
And so this is a worker cooperative that is put together. They're a bakery, and they hire newly out inmates, or they hire felons to do as part of the worker cooperative. They specialize in hiring that, and the results have been extremely well for this company.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's a small worker cooperative. They produce awesome products. Like the bread is killer. Like Dave's Killer Bread, he's not fucking shitting you. Plus, it's a fun pun on the felon aspect. Um, so Dave's Killer Bread, but good stuff. Yeah, good company. Definitely take a look at them. But there's so many stories of that. Yeah, especially given in the video games industry. Now you're right. Like the video games industry will never fucking do it because again, there's behemoth companies. Why change when you don't have to? You just keep on doing what they're doing. But
you may get individual companies that do something similar, like, and correct me if I'm wrong if you know differently, but isn't Valve a flat organization?
Valve is a private owned organization. I don't necessarily know
Right.
that they're. I'd have to dig into it.
My understanding is that there's not really a hierarchy at Valve. Like, it's kind of everybody is on a level playing field, which is not quite the same thing. Obviously, we're talking about ownership versus
correct.
power.
Yeah, but still, it's better.
But it's better because because everybody has a say and everybody has an equal voice at the table. If those 1,900 people that Microsoft fired had a voice, I don't think they would have been like, yeah, you're right. We need to be let go. I think that giving the workers a voice is a good first step towards correcting the problem.
One of my favorite scenes from The Wire is a scene where they're talking about chicken McNuggets. And basically what they're talking about is, the guy that invented chicken nuggets probably still working in the basement of some fucking restaurant somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And just how intellectual labor is often stolen by these companies. And
Right.
and that's what I'm saying. In a cooperative model, like, you're going to take that guy, that idea guy who came up with the chicken nuggets. Like, yeah, you may get the chicken nugget, but what else are you fucking leaving on the table from that extremely talented individual?
Mm-hmm.
I don't want that guy cooking chicken. I want that guy elevated. And
Right.
that's not something that will happen contrary to popular belief. A lot of times that guy gets completely ignored and his intellectual labor stolen. Labor
Mm-hmm.
stolen every single fucking day. And yeah, not only is it sad to see on an individual basis, but so many great ideas, so much synergy of information is being left on the table when that kind of thing happens. And I just think it's a shame.
Yeah.
Duolingo is a good example of that. Have you heard of what's going on with Duolingo? You mentioned.
Yeah, I'm on
Dude.
like a 1,800 plus day streak on Duolingo, and I'm starting to lose steam on it just because of what I've been hearing coming out of there.
Yeah, basically they're replacing the actual translators with this AI garble. And so a lot of the translations, a lot of they're teaching, you're supposed to be teaching people other fucking languages or
Right.
translating, and what you're getting now is this machine garble instead of actual professional translation.
Right.
And it's
Here's the thing, right? Like, not to discount AI, I have seen
oh, and
some
I love AI,
remarkable
but
things. I
yeah,
have seen some remarkable things from AI, but I've also seen some remarkably terrible mistakes from AI.
yeah,
So the idea that I'm entrusting my education, in the case of Duolingo, to an AI that is not fully baked yet. We'll just say that. It's not
uh-huh,
fully baked. It needs a little more time in the oven. I'm not like, do I want to pay for that? Like, do I want
sure.
to continue to support it when I'm not? I have no confidence that it's giving me what it was previously giving me.
And then
Yeah.
that's what I'm talking about. So that's that statement I made years ago that people foo-fooed, and it's like, hey, no. So what you have is, yes, the AI is going to replace the translators, but there are some things that the AI can't do that the human translator can do. And so 80% of translators will be gone, but there will be that 20% or that 15% or that 10% of the best translators that will have a job doing it. And they're simply running around like chickens with their head cut off, correcting the machine when the machine makes a mistake.
Right.
And it's happening across every industry. Again, it's an automation of the mind. And
And
it's
that's
going
the
to have
challenge. That's the challenge. If only 15 or 10% of the population can have a job because they happen to be the top 10 or 15% in their field, like, what do we do about that? What do we do with this? How
the
do we?
the United Nations has recommended a universal base income by 2035, I think it was, for the estimated 86% of the global population that will be without jobs.
Right.
Now, I don't know if that trajectory is I don't know if we're going to meet that trajectory at this point, but that's a scary fucking prospect, man.
Mm-hmm.
Now here's the interesting thing, and V and I were talking about this, my good friend V. It's an interesting idea because these tools should be liberatory, Brandon. AI should be liberatory. Blockchain should be liberatory. These are liberatory tools. These are tools that if you take and you use them in the right way, could lead to a future where maybe we don't need, maybe a vast majority of the population can have leisure time and creative time to create wonderful
100%.
things. But in this power structure in Leviathan, in the power structures that's existed since Hobbes and Confucius, ain't gonna fucking happen. Those are
the
weapons. Those are fucking
the bad
weapons.
actors. Yeah, exactly. The bad actors are waiting in the wings for any new opportunity to take advantage of something, and we've seen that with the blockchain. We're seeing it with AI already, even though it's still relatively young. You know, until we have a way to combat that, I don't know. I don't know what we do.
And that's the problem, man. It kind of gets to a conversation we were having on the Discord. The machine is the problem. The power structure is the problem. And so in this power structure, there's nothing else that can be but a weapon. And it's a weapon aimed at us. That's all it can ever be. And that's the problem. That's the problem with all of this stuff. This is tools of liberation turned into weapons of war against us. And it's happening in AI. It's happening with blockchain. It's happening every technology will be consumed by the. And again, I call it Leviathan because that's Thomas Hobbes' book, and that is the absolute fucking lie, brutal, brutish, cruel, and short, and absolute fucking lie. But what Hobbes was able to do is Hobbes allowed a failing power structure to reform itself and reform around the ideals of Hobbes, which is consent of the governed. That's basically what happened. And so it's the same shit that we've had for 5,000 years, the same failed bullshit that we've had for 5,000 fucking years. But it's got a modern coat of paint because now there's consent of the governed. Now there's democracy and there's consent of the governed, and it's all bullshit, man. It all underpins the same fucking green trap power structure we've had for 5,000 years. Now my anarchism is showing. I'm getting super drunk here. But you can also take that to corporation. You can take that into the games industry. Anywhere you want to fucking go, you're going to be able to take this shit. And so it's kind of the same point I was making, and it's why I'm so scared to like. And Emily makes a good point that maybe he was offering to sell that to me, which that's the best case scenario. Worst case scenario is this guy wants to give me a $650 piece of fucking hardware. Scared the shit out of me, homie. Like, you know, if you got a $650 Steam Deck that you really want to, that you got to get rid of, it's just burning a hole in your pocket. Why not take that down to the children's hospital? You know, why not give that to? You're gonna turn around and you're gonna give it to a motherfucker with 450 Switch games? Why? Why? Don't I have enough shit? But that's the kind of the thing I was talking about the other day, and I guess that's my question. Like, especially it's kind of relevant because like you're starting to jump into some new ventures. Does that scare the shit out of you at all? And you had a really good point about agency that I want you to at least kind of elaborate on here for the chat because that was good.
Yeah. I know what you mean. I think what we're seeing there in your example is the difference in perspective from the giver and the givee. You as the person who would be receiving the gift, if it was a gift in that situation, are saying, why do I deserve this gift? I haven't done anything deserving of this gift.
Correct.
In my opinion.
I make hobbyist videos on YouTube.
I have fun. My reward for making the videos is that I have fun making the videos. If you're giving me a reward, there's an imbalance. You've created an imbalance. What the giver in that case, I think, is saying is, regardless of your experience as the receiver, I have gained something from the work that you've done, from the creation that you've made. I've gained something from that is valuable to me. And what you are seeing, the value that you're seeing in the work, and the value that the viewer, the giver, is seeing in the work, are at odds, right? Like
Okay.
you are like,
Yeah.
there's no more value in this than what I've already received. They are saying, no, I see more value in it. And from my perspective, like giving a gift like that to somebody who has given you something, even if they didn't intend to, if that wasn't the experience they were thinking, um, is a way to obviously express your appreciation for the thing that you were given. But it also, like, speaking as someone who has obviously has given a gift before, like it
Right.
feels really good.
Yes, it does.
It's not even for you really. Like at that point, it's for that person. And I know in the Discord, when we were having that conversation with everybody, people brought up good points that from time to time there are folks that give with certain expectations attached to the gift, right? Like,
Oh yeah.
well, I'm giving to you, therefore you owe me X, Y, or Z, whatever the case may be. I would argue that's not a real gift given in goodwill. That is an investment made with the expectation of reciprocation. And discerning the
and as we
difference,
talked about, reciprocation, one of the 6 most powerful forces in the universe.
right? And
Powerful stuff.
discerning the difference between somebody giving with an expectation of reciprocation and somebody giving out of gratitude and out of appreciation is, in my mind, that's the real challenge. That's the real crux of the issue, the separation between those two things. And to be fair to the people that believed differently than I did in the discussion, you can't always tell immediately where somebody falls on that, and it's a spectrum too, right? Like,
right. Yeah.
Somebody might be 90% just showing their appreciation, but there's a 10% of them that's like, oh, but I hope that they don't ever sell this thing that I gave them, or that they make a video about it because they're so grateful that I did it.
Right.
And 10% of them is hurt if that doesn't happen the way they expect it to. That's going to happen. That's human nature. But it's to me at that point, it becomes a matter of discernment, right? Like I need to do my best to discern the giver's intentions.
Intense, yeah.
And
Intent's always important.
And then I need to do my best to discern the ramifications if I'm wrong, right?
Right.
But again, like it all comes back to that, like we were saying, the conversation around agency.
Yeah,
Where
and again, as an archaeo thinker, agency is always that's a great. I'm always going to be compelled by an agency argument. So that was a good argument.
right, yeah, like just the fact that I think, especially, and I can't speak to this directly myself. I don't have an audience that is that size yet. But to folks that are speaking to an audience of tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people, it becomes, I think, easier to view them less as individual people and more as like a sort of, I'm going to try to choose my words carefully because I don't want to insult anybody.
No, you're good, man.
But like a sort of flock of, nameless supporters, sheep, if you will, that are not important on an individual level to the person in power, quote unquote.
Well, yeah, it's Ashby's law. Or not? No, it's not Ashby's law. So everybody take a shot. It's actually Dunbar's number.
Dunbar's number.
Yeah. Eventually, you lose track after a certain amount of people, and you can't keep track anymore.
You get to that point where not only can you not really compute the number of people that you're talking to, but that you don't see them as individuals anymore. Like I've seen multiple times YouTubers in particular post a screenshot of something, a video that was put out, and say, look, nobody saw this video, and the view count will be like 11,000. And I'm like, 11,000 individual human beings watched this video. The fact that you can say nobody watched this is literally crazy to me. think about talking to a room of 11,000 people. That is mind-boggling. I can't picture that. You know what I mean?
And again, it's another level. We need this be a good place if we could tag OJ or John, like Eye Patch Wolf, in here. That'd be fucking great. But yeah,
you can't fathom it. Like, even speaking to, if a video has 200 views, you have spoken to 200 people, and when you stop viewing your audience as people and you start to view these big numbers, it becomes easier to unintentionally dehumanize that audience. And so they're not people with agency of their own, with their own interests and their own appreciation for maybe even the work that you've done.
right.
They are mindless. They are, and you don't necessarily mean that as an insult. You just don't think of them as having the ability to have a mind and have a will of their own.
Well, at that point, yeah, it becomes a statistic again.
Every number is a statistic. Every viewer is just a little notch in that chart that goes up and down. And to me, the challenge, and it's, I'm not saying it's easy, but like, the challenge is just to continue to grant every viewer, every commenter, as having agency. Like, one of the things that I've stopped doing when I first started YouTube, I did this differently. But when I first started YouTube, I would get a nasty comment and I would reply with snark or like sarcasm, or,
you do the zoo approach.
I would answer the rudeness with rudeness of my own.
Mirror energy.
And yeah. And what I've started doing since it was within the past, like, I don't know, 6-8 months, is I try to give literally every person the benefit of the doubt, and say, I don't know this person's situation. I don't know their communication style. I have to assume that they are a person with, their own life, their own personality, their own agency. I'm going to respond to them in a way that suggests that I'm not offended by what they're saying, and maybe dig a little bit deeper into what they're saying. And I've had multiple times where that has paid off in a really significant way, where somebody makes what sounds like a rude comment to a video. I respond with, an honest question or, response to their comment. And then we start a dialogue, and it ends up, turning out great. Like, we have a good conversation. Mm-hmm. Or they reiterate what they were saying in a way like, oh no, I didn't mean this. I actually meant that I, blah, 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 whatever the case may be. Whereas, in the past, I may have just responded with snark, moved on, and then we were both pissed off and nobody had a good day.
100%. One of the things I get a lot on here is people are like, you're really scary on Twitter, but you're really nice on your show. And it's like, yeah, there's a reason for that. It's because I'm talking face to face with somebody in person.
Right.
Like that, there is an impact to that, man. There absolutely is. Instead of staring at text, which again, that's simulacrum. That is the representation of a person that has become its own simulacrum. Instead of dealing with that, I'm now dealing face to face or voice to voice with a person. It has an impact. And I
do my, go ahead.
Yeah, and I try my best to always do, if I do have a disagreement with somebody, I've done it with trolls. Like, hey, I have a show. We can come on, and even if we don't talk live, like if you just want to talk in Discord, we can do that. Might be better. Yeah. Might be better than sniping at each other about how much Rick and Morty we fucking watch.
I've seen some of those exchanges. Yeah.
It's it might be more useful. Might have more utility. They never take me up, but it's always right. It's always worth talking.
With the concept of the simulacrum, right? Like, when I'm on a video, there's an aspect of it that's performative, right? Especially if I'm reading a script, but if I'm just going off the cuff, there's an aspect of performance to it. But I try to still produce my authentic self when I'm doing a video. So, I like to think that if you're watching me perform, in a video, it's still me. You're still getting a sense for who I am. And I like that to continue over into comments or into Discord chats or Twitter
Right.
or whatever the case may be. Like, I don't want to view anybody as a number. I don't want to view anybody as a statistic. Like, I love my channel to grow. I would love that. It's kind of plateaued at this point. There was a period of time where it was growing pretty fast. It's kind of basically stopped for the time being.
Well, it's
I
like
would
with
love for it to grow because
it's like with weight loss. You'll break through it, man.
yeah, I mean, maybe we will. But the thing is, like, regardless of how big or how small it is, like, I don't want to change the way I view any of the people that are watching and giving and doing me the kindness of interacting with me, right? Like, having wanting to have a conversation with me. That's crazy. Like, it's crazy to me that two people give a crap about what I say about anything. But if I put out a video and there's 1,000 views on I'm like, what? Why are you really? And at a certain point, I have to stop being self-deprecating and say, okay, like, they're interested in what I have to say. I'm interested in what they have to say. Like, be authentic, be real, and grant them, again, the agency of, they are individual people that have thoughts. They're not numbers. They're not statistics or whatever.
So I've thought about your agency argument, and I've thought a lot about it. I do think that is compelling. I think it has some good points to it. I guess what it comes down to me is our agency stronger than reciprocity? I guess is what that comes down to, because I think agency is important. I also acknowledge that reciprocity is one of the strongest social forces we have.
You're 100% right, and that's to my point about discernment. That's where that really comes into play. That you have to make the call, and you're not going to be right all the time. You're gonna call it wrong, and calling it wrong could have the consequence of somebody expects reciprocity from you for something they've done, or you get it wrong in the other direction, where somebody was just genuinely expressing some sort of gratitude to you, and you've kind of hurt them by rejecting that gift or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, and it's also complicated to me by the fact that there is a giant middleman machine in between me and my viewers, or between you and your viewers. So it's not just, see, that's the thing. It's not just me and them talking, is it? It's me and a select group of people that the algorithm has pre-selected, putting us in contact with each other, and none of us would be talking if not for this algorithm, this machine that is in between that experience. And I guess that further complicates it as well to me.
It's true, but the fact is, regardless of how the two of you ended up in this room together, you are in this room together, right? Like,
True.
You are talking, and we bring with us the baggage that we come in with, having been brought here in this way. But we are still both in this room together, so
true.
There's things that we owe each other, that we kind of owe each other. And I think that varies. It's not the same thing to everybody, but
and there it is. And see, and there it is. And so there's the public position and there's the private position. And I'm drunkard up enough to where I'll give my private position. So there is and again, like when I have my moral stance, that moral stance is absolutely there, and I think there is some worthy consideration to that. There's also the thing that scares the shit out of me in terms of there's an ancient Inuit saying that you might have heard, or may not have, but it's David Graeber quotes it in one of his books. It's take a shot, everybody. But it's David Graeber on the bingo card. But anyway, he says that gifts make slaves as whips make dogs. And I guess that's one of the things that concerns me. If you look at statistically, do you know what the average donation it takes to buy a Washington politician is? Do you know what the average donation is? It's $2,000. $2,000.
That's less than I would have thought.
It's $2,000. They're so cheap. They're so fucking cheap. And that's the thing of it. Like when you look at that, and that's the thing. Like if reciprocity wasn't as powerful as I think it is, Where are all of the one-shot leaders who show up and they don't care about popularity and they're just going to get it done? And the answer to that is reciprocity. So $2,000 buys DuPont a poison river. They don't care. They don't care if you drink poison. I got $2,000. I'm compelled to give these people what they want. Whether I want to or not. It seems like that's an awfully cheap price for it. I don't think that buys anybody. I don't think it's the money that bought that. I think it's the reciprocity that bought that, which is why they do it.
The sense of obligation that comes.
Yes. Yeah, and again, this is something I have been obsessed with, honestly. There's a reason why my first review, Fata Morgana, really, really helms in on that obligation. Now, obligation. Now the pure anarchist perspective on that is that obligation is always to be eschewed. Now, I don't necessarily think I agree with that. I think obligation in its best can be ties that bind us and can bind us together, but obligation, they're right when they state that obligation can also be a weapon. It absolutely can be. And I guess that scares me. Like, am I creating obligation with my audience? And is my audience creating obligation in me?
I would say that, like, hearing your thought process, as you go through this subject, it's actually really encouraging to me, because what I would say to you and what I would encourage you to think about is the
Yeah,
fact that not only does your audience have agency, but you have agency too.
I
Like,
do. I do.
you have the ability to use your discernment and use your best judgment about anything. So it could be that after careful thought and consideration, you come to the conclusion that the possible detriments to accepting any sort of, even, pure gratitude based gift is too great for you to, run the risk of accepting.
Yeah,
So you make a blanket statement: no, I'm not going to accept anything. I appreciate it, I really
which
do.
which
Please
I
don't
already
be.
which I already did. I kind of sealed myself off
You
already.
can, sure, but I think that any person who has any sort of platform has that decision to make, and they need to keep in mind both that their audience does have agency, and they need to respect the fact that their audience has that they have agency, they have their own unique thoughts and perspectives, they have reasons for doing the things that they're doing, and that they do too,
Yes,
and that's
and
hugely important.
and this is part of why I'm glad this came up in the Discord. I'm glad we're talking about it now because there's content creators that are here now. The important thing is that you're thinking about it. Doesn't
Right.
necessarily mean that you're a bad guy or a good guy, no matter what position you fall on. But just thinking about it will help eliminate a lot of what these concerns are. Just thinking about it.
Mhm.
Just thinking about it. Because the problem is whether it's a politician accepting bribes or whether it's somebody accepting gifts from a PO box, most people aren't thinking about it because they've got us running around like chickens with our heads cut off and we're too fucking busy to think about it. And that's
Right,
how
and
this whole machine runs, is because we're too busy to think
that's
about it.
how, yeah, and that's kind of like what I think I mentioned in the Discord chat. I'm a little tipsy, so I'm trying to remember exactly what we talked about.
Me too, man.
But but I think I remember us talking about me bringing up the notion that, um, in the presence of a power imbalance, which, when you're talking about a content creator and their audience, there, to an extent, there's a power imbalance. It's not, I don't have power over anyone really, but there is something that some would argue is a power imbalance in that situation, um, and using or abusing that power imbalance, whatever power imbalance may exist, to motivate the giving of gifts would be a flat out moral
Scummy.
problem, right? Like, and
Scummy.
that's where you get bribery, like, politicians accepting bribes. That's a pure imbalance of power, leading to, gift giving as a way of, you know
100%. And they
moving.
know that. That's the thing.
And they know it. Yeah, exactly. They're playing the game the same as the person who's getting the gift is playing the game. Um, yeah, I guess the key is to just play a different game. Play a different game with your audience.
See, I
You
like
know.
that. Now, I actually like that. So, the Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind is a game that actually, like, when you go and speak to the Ashlander tribes, they have a very different gift giving custom, and it's actually based on some Middle Eastern, the Bedouins, for example, and their gift giving customs. And essentially, what they would do is, so the giving a gift is actually a very, it's a game, and it's a very dangerous game, and yet it's a game with a lot of advantage that you can gain as well. And essentially, what it is that to give a gift in these is basically the test of the gift is how well tailored it is to the giver. And
Mm.
so you give the gift, and if it's a good gift, you stand to gain a lot. But if it's a gift that the owner wouldn't appreciate, you actually stand to lose social clout. And
Mm.
so I'm not saying that's the game that needs to be played, but just that idea of thinking in different terms than the standard game theory, I
Mm.
think I think it's very useful. I think that's a very useful thing. So yeah, I think we've kind of gone everything we can into that. I think that was an awesome dialectic. I guess we'll go over and let the chat hijack it, see if the Trails guys are still in, see what we got going on here.
Oh yeah, looks like there's been a lot of activity.
Yeah, so we'll kind of go up and we'll use this new feature here. So let's see. We were Trail. So 90s handheld gamer says you sound more like a Trails guy now, Zoo. I'm working on it.
He's getting there.
I'm working on it. I still gotta get some Trails hair on my knuckles, but I'm not quite there yet. But we're getting there. So Matthew Lynn says I actually agree with you 100%. No one realizes the impact AI will have on society as a whole. At first, they said it would never be able to do artistic works. Today, AI art is all over the internet. Yeah, I can say I called that, but a lot of folks can't. Yeah. I called that years ago. I said that this is going to be this is going to be a fourth industrial revolution. The AI revolution, or oh shit, what's his name? Fuck, I can't. I'm too drunk to think of it. But basically, it's the automation revolution, is what this particular person said. 90s handheld gamer asked Zoo, have you ever read 1984? Yes, many times. Many times. A fantastic book. Fantastic book. Orwell was a prophet. Rush Dog says, "Evening, gents. How's it going, Rush? I'm glad you
Hey,
can make
Rush.
it in." And Rush says Brandon is correct. Valve has a flat corporate structure, so awesome. Kudos to them for doing it. I would argue that explains a lot of their success. That's good. I know they have wheels on the discs. That was kind of the piece of propaganda they put out to kind of get that in the public conscious. Like, well, yeah, Valve, we have wheels on our discs. Like, we can wheel our discs wherever we want. Mike Clark, wait, welcome in, Mike. He says AI video games, IP theft, the death of physical media, and more Western developers killing more jobs. What a great week. Yeah.
Yep.
Been rough. Now I want to give you a positive pill on the death of physical media, because I've been thinking about this, Mike. And let me tell you what I'm thinking on this. So I'm not going to be the one to tell you that physical media isn't going away and the games industry isn't waging absolute war on it, because they are. But one of the things I'm seeing, and I want to correct this notion, I'm seeing it a lot, is that people are tying the death of brick and mortar retail to the death of physical media. And that's not the case. Those are two entirely separate things. So people are saying, oh, because Best Buy is getting rid of physical media. No, I would argue that Best Buy is downsizing because Best Buy is on the fucking way out, like most brick and mortar retail. Now, when I will get scared is when companies like Amazon stop selling physical games, because that will truly herald the death of physical media. Because guess what? You can go to bestbuy.com. Even though they're phasing out physical there, they've already said still going to have physical on the website. Still go buy Switch games on the website. I just bought 2 of them. So I think that while I think that physical media they are waging war on it, I think the argument that physical media, you can point to brick and mortar stores dying and phasing out physical as proof that physical media is dying. I think that's a malformed argument. I think those are two entirely separate things. I think that brick and mortar is downsizing, not necessarily that is proof of physical media in and of itself going away. So, Brandon, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. You know, and I thought that Best Buy had kind of backpedaled on that physical media elimination in the stores, but maybe their backpedaling was to still offer it online. I'm not sure. Um, but regardless, uh, physical media is, I don't think it goes away permanently. I think that it becomes a more, and I was just talking actually, I don't know if Matthew Lynn's still in the chat, but I was just talking about this with him today, or was it yesterday? I don't know. I'm too drunk. Um, about the concept of physical media moving to a more boutique style setup, like, you know, like you have your vinyl records. Like I can subscribe to Spotify or Apple Music, and I can get instant access to all the music that I could ever want.
Hmm.
And that's great. That's fine. That's fun. Um, but as a music appreciator, as a musician myself, as a lover of music, I like to own the music that I love. And there's no better way to do that for me than to buy a vinyl record, and have the physical representation of the music.
Well,
Um,
and can confirm you're getting less distortion even than CDs or anything. Like
right,
it's the
right. Well, I mean,
purest.
it's the raw sound, right? Like
Hmm.
it's there's innumerous benefits to it.
100%.
The downside, of course, is the size, the storage, etc. Um, the you know, impermanence of it, just, you know,
Yeah,
decay,
vinyl is, yeah,
whatever.
notoriously, yeah, yeah,
But it's still a you know, physical manifestation of my appreciation for this piece of art.
absolutely.
And I think video games are the same thing. Like that you may not go into a Best Buy, maybe even someday you don't go on Amazon and buy a physical game, but there are going to be companies that are going to produce these games in some form. Now, I you know, like at a certain point, like Xbox, Microsoft is gung ho. Microsoft, and I just want, just as an aside, no disrespect to Xbox fans, but like Microsoft has been the key instigator in getting rid of physical media. Like they have been at it since the beginning. Like they have wanted to get rid of this for a long time, right? Like their next Xbox, they're planning no physical drive at all. Xbox Game Pass was their way to strangle out, you know, the existence of, or the need for physical media. They have been behind this from the beginning, and it's frustrating to me as a lover of physical media, that they have been doing this. Regardless, anyway, aside from that,
I mean,
um,
you know, the more I think about Xbox, and again, everybody knows how I am. I don't even like Nintendo, and I'm a fucking Nintendo Switch channel. So, the more I think about Xbox, the more of a waste of time I feel like it is to even waste thoughts on Xbox. If you know what I'm saying, it's a fucking
sure,
zombie. It's a zombie console. Like it really is.
it's it's frustrating. The thing that frustrates me is the amount of power that they have over the games that I like. One thing I've always said, and this sounds like I'm being a snarky asshole, and I'm not trying to be. I'm being real. Like when Microsoft would buy a developer, they would always basically be buying developers that I didn't care. Like it wouldn't affect me in any way, because the games that developer made are not any that I am interested in. Right. Some exceptions like ZeniMax, like I'm, you know, Bethesda. I
On
like Bethesda
Ensemble
games,
Studios hurt. That hurt bad.
but a lot of the developers that they've bought over the years, I'm like, well, I mean, they're consolidating the market that is not me, right? And that, whatever, that's fine.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, they've been building this empire, and even though the games that they make don't have any bearing on me or the games that I like, it's having like a rippling effect that is influencing, that is affecting the games and the companies that I like. And that's frustrating. Like if the Call of Duty fans don't get any physical games in the future, I don't think they probably care. You know, they'll download the latest game onto their
Well, I mean, yeah,
Xbox
the game's
20.
already 160 gigabyte
It's
unoptimized
not
piece
on the
of
disc
trash.
anyway. Yeah,
Yeah, it's an
it's not on the disc
unoptimized
anyway because they
nightmare
can't.
piece of trash.
Right. They can't fit it on the disc anyway, so they're downloading it. They don't care. It doesn't matter to them as much. But because they're doing that, and the other companies are aware of their success, they're pushing in that same direction, and so their malfeasance, it's not malfeasance, but their their behavior is affecting me, and that ticks me off.
Well, yeah, it's Smo on top of the fucking dragon horn, except instead of gold, it's fucking game property. It's intellectual property, and it sucks.
Right.
Like it's
And I'm just I expect. So anyway, back to the original question. I expect that gaming becomes a boutique collector's market, similar to vinyl, similar to I don't know if DVD collecting or Blu-ray collecting is at that point
look
yet.
at it like hardcover books, only in reverse. So
Sure.
a hardcover book
Sure.
comes out for the collectors first, and then the mass market paperback goes out second. Think of it as kind of the reverse of that. So
Yeah.
basically, the digital game, the mass market paperback will go out first, and then later on, we'll get our hardcover physical video
The
game
physical game.
that'll come
And
out later.
there's the fear that, like, if Nintendo and if Sony and if Microsoft stop producing consoles that play physical games, does that mean that physical games just can't exist anymore? I don't necessarily think that's true. I think my hope is that there will be companies similar to like Analog, who
Yes.
produces the Pocket, the Super NT, the Super S, or the Mega
Yeah,
SG,
they'll
whatever.
make hardware that can play those games. Exactly.
They will create hardware that can use basically hardware emulation to do the same things that these consoles can do. And the reason that they would be able to do that is the same reason that Analog can produce the Analog Pocket and not get the pantsuit off of them by Nintendo. It's because they're not actually copying the hardware. They're creating I'm too drunk to think of what it's called, chip. Field program, FPGA.
Yeah.
They have the FPGA in there. So they're not actually copying the chip. So to me, and it's still a relatively young concept, this FPGA console thing. I suppose it's possible that Nintendo or Sony or somebody could go after a company like Analog in the future.
Well, what's great about it too is whether it's HyperKit on like the lower end or like your Analog on the higher end of things. Like these companies are really doing the Lord's work, man, because what they're doing is, especially on those older consoles, the point of failure was always the hardware back then. Like a fucking EPROM, a nuclear blast it'll survive a fucking it's like the cockroach of like fucking software. Like you can't kill it. You can't kill it. EPROMs last forever, burned EPROMs. And so that's what those old cartridges are on. So the failure point's rarely the cartridge. Even if the chips are scratched, you can just polish that shit. It's amazing. As long as you have it like soak the actual EPROM in water, you're fine. So the failure rate is on the NES. It's on the Atari 2600. It's on the Super Nintendo, the Sega Genesis. I have a Sega Genesis in my closet it was a Sega Genesis Model 2. The button's so fucking worn out, Brandon, that I have to put a rock on top of it to keep it open playing because it was one of the push buttons. So literally, I got like a rock the size of that will weigh that button down. That way, the system stays on because the button is so worn out from pushing it. Yeah, it's that kind of thing. So it's hard. It's always a point of failure on the hardware, and so Analog and HyperKit and companies of their ilk have come along and basically made it to where those games are basically immortal as long as you have the actual cartridges. It's cool. It's cool as hell.
And the next step beyond that, having the hardware, is having access to a library of games, having access to all of the game. Like if I want to watch a movie, pick any obscure movie from the 70s, say. I don't know. I can't think of any right now. But some obscure
Suspiria,
movie from
Dario Argento's Suspiria.
If I want to watch Suspiria.
Yeah.
I have multiple ways that I can watch that film. I can watch it digitally if I want to stream it, if I want to download it digitally. I have that option. I can experience that movie. I bet you I could go online and find a DVD of that film and purchase it.
You absolutely
and have it delivered to my house. Right. So I could get a DVD of that film, right? And I could put it in my PlayStation 5. Right? My PlayStation 5, and I could watch that movie because DVD, Blu-ray, all these formats all continue to work. We can still watch these things.
Yeah.
Video games don't have that. every time a new console comes out, with the few exceptions where there's some backwards compatibility, you lose the ability to experience these older games, right? Now, analog solves one part of that problem, where if you have the old game, you can purchase the analog console and you can play it.
But not the
But
other
the next step is, but the other part of the problem is there are plenty of consoles that analog hasn't covered, and there's not a standardized format for video games. It's kind of bonkers to me that we can settle on a standardized format for films, and I mean books. Let's be real. But video games have to come on all these completely different and incompatible formats.
And the software is getting fucking incredibly expensive at this point.
And the software, I mean, the ballooning costs are like, that's a whole other can of worms. But what I would love to see as the next step beyond analog making consoles is some sort of device similar to analog that uses something. And this is, I don't know if this is going to get me hate, but because I know there's a lot of hate for limited run games, and rightly so. A lot of the hate they get is deserved. They do a lot of things poorly. But one of the things I really admire that they do is their Carbon engine. Are you familiar with the Carbon engine?
I am familiar with that because actually somebody I follow, MVG Dave, actually is one of the lead techs on that. He's one of the lead programmers on that. Yeah, if you ever watch the Spawncast, he's on the Spawncast too with OJ.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Great dude. And
so
Carbon engine is amazing.
So the reason that interests me so much is it's basically a proposed solution to this problem, where there's all these varying formats of games, and we have to have all these different machines to play these different games. Where, like I said, I could put Suspiria, a DVD of Suspiria, a movie from the 70s, in my console and watch that movie today, and it's fine. I don't need to go back to 1970, find a console or find a device from the 70s to play this movie. I can
play it's it on exactly the same as it would be if you watched
the same movie.
Whereas, the Carbon engine's great. Like, we're gonna get Rocket Knight Adventures games, and they're like 1 for 1. It's amazing.
Right.
They said it's amazing. It's emulation, but it's as good as it gets. Like, it's almost 1 for 1. They said.
So you take that Carbon engine and you take the concept of an FPGA console. You marry those two ideas and you have a device that you can produce physical media for, right? Like, it doesn't have to be a digital only solution. You can still own your media, produce physical media of whatever game you want, whatever game, a publisher wants to put out, and have it play on this machine because it can play all of the games. Well, why, like, that seems so simple. Like, it seems not simple, but like, it seems logical to me. Like, why do we need there to be 500 different machines and incompatible formats? Let's just have a machine. Like, let's play games, right?
100%, absolutely. I agree with that completely. Let's see, we got. But good question, Mike. Thanks for bringing that up, man. Mike brought up a discussion in and of itself. Thanks, man. That was awesome. So Inferno Fox Gaming is here. What's going on, Inferno? What's up, buddy?
Hey.
And Rush Dog saying hi to Inferno. So Inferno, if you're still here, wave to Rush. How's your Friday? It's Friday. It's good. Especially after the fucking week I've had. Inferno says it's going good. How you doing? 90s Handheld saying what up, Inferno, and also saying what's up to Rush. We got Inferno Fox. Hey, buddy. So we got a love fest going on in the chat. I love to fucking see it. I love it. Pretty good. Enjoying this discussion. Glad everybody's enjoying the discussion. I try to keep it not. I try to. I mean, I talk like a trucker, but I try to keep it not super big brained. But then same here. So everybody enjoying the chat, which is good. Everybody kind of talking to everybody, which is awesome. It says might tap out soon though. It's been up since like 5 a.m. Holy shit, homie. Woo. Well, definitely. Yeah, if you got to tap out, I totally get that. Ain't no shame in that. 5 a.m. day. That's a day, man. 90 says doing good. Hope y'all having a good weekend. Inferno Fox says ditto. Rush Dog says, yeah, it echoes my sentiments, which that's a long day, 90s. Rush Dog says, gift giving is remarkably cheap in business, too. Tickets to a ball game can lead to a multi-million-dollar contract. Exactly, and that's reciprocity, man. Then smart organizations have policies against accepting gifts, but that mainly applies to the rank and file. Yeah. Physical media goes away when the consoles no longer have disk drives or console slots. Exactly. And that's part of why I'm talking about we need to rethink what we mean when we say physical game. Like, we really do need to rethink that. Nothing is forever. Everything is ephemeral, right? I've asked the question. So Baldur's Gate 3 on the PC doesn't have a physical version, except if I have an SD card and I have a copy of Good Old Games, Baldur's Gate 3, and I put the entire DRM-free game on my SD card, do I not have a physical game? Now, the answer is yes, with an asterisk. Because as Rush Dog has talked about, we've talked about this before, you and I, Rush. If I want to trade that game in, or if I want to sell that game, it has no fucking value whatsoever because there's no guarantee behind it. If I want to put it on my shelf with a fancy box, that's not going to happen unless I buy the box.
Unless you make it yourself.
Unless I make it myself. That's what Etsy's for. I actually did that with Arkham Asylum, actually. So Arkham Trilogy only comes with one fucking game on the disc. And so I'm the crazy bastard who literally went on Etsy and commissioned somebody to make me a Switch Batman Arkham Asylum fucking sleeve. And that way I have that. So yeah,
nice.
because for whatever reason, Warner Brothers decided to leave the other two games off the cartridge, and I'll deal with them on my review because I'm going to point that out too. Like literally, Brandon, I'm going to review the game. Spoiler alert for people in the chat. I'm going to review the game, and I'm going to do my review of Arkham, and I'm going to okay, it's time to move on to Arkham City, and then I'm literally just going to show the message saying, "Oh, you'll need to download this game in order to play it," and that's the fucking review. Fuck you guys. Fuck you guys. Anyway, um, there will likely always be physical cartridges, or on niche services like the Evercade. Yeah, it's a good point. Evercade. Plus, there will likely be more physical games made for retro consoles. Yeah, homebrew. The homebrew market is amazing, especially the Brazilian homebrew market for Sega Genesis. Some of those fucking games they make are incredible.
Yeah, I need to start looking more into some repro because
Repro's good. Repro's good.
I've shifted my collecting mentality from when I started collecting from like I need to have this authentic thing because it's worth this amount of money to I want to have a physical representation of this thing I love, right?
Absolutely.
And if somebody creates a really cool, compelling reproduction of something, that's fine. That's great,
Oh yeah, no, 100%. Now there are going to be some points made about repro down here that are worth mentioning, but yeah, I cut my teeth in the Super Nintendo collecting game because there were some games that were never localized, but what you could do is you could find localized, fan translated games burned onto the original EPROM, basically. So it burned the EPROM on there, and they would also put the fan translation on there. And so basically, it's a way to play translated Super Famicom games on your Super Nintendo. Super cool. So Rush Dog says, SNES, Genesis, Dreamcast, etc. still get new games to this day. Yeah. Yeah, it just goes to show the longevity and how much love are for those fucking systems too, man. Matthew Lynn says, I buy a lot of SNES repros, mostly as an appreciation for the games I love. Yeah, Terranigma, man. Terranigma. Anybody, if you haven't played Terranigma yet, play it.
Terranigma is the one that I need to get. I love that game so much.
So good, and I'll fight anybody. A Link to the Past equivalent in quality.
If I had been able to experience Terranigma as a teenager when it came out, it would have just completely blown my mind. I mean, it blew my mind even as an adult.
Well, yeah, Illusion of Gaia alone was good. Like,
it was so good. Yeah,
I adore Illusion of Gaia, but Terranigma is on another fucking level. It's up there. It is up there with the best of the Super Nintendo.
100%.
It is a game. The gameplay is tight. The story is incredible. You talk about a game of big fucking ideas. That is a game of big ideas. Like literally encapsulates like the creation of a world. Like it's so good.
Right.
So Chill Collect says, yeah, I went to GameStop and I never paid attention, but now the employee pointed it out. The Xbox section is the smallest compared to Switch and PlayStation. Well, they're all small, Chill. We all know the biggest section is Funko Pops there. Like that's like what kind of fucking Funko Pops is on sale at my GameStop today? Like what is it? What is it that Phil had said? Like Phil One Up had said he went into his local GameStop and he's like, save $20 if you spend $225 for games. Shit deal. $15 off $40 of Funko Pops, which is the same deal last time I came in here a month ago. Shit deal. Like absolutely.
I have 2 Funko Pops. I have Arnold and Helga from Hey Arnold. That's it. Those are the only Funko Pops that I own.
I love the Hey Arnold representation. and you gotta love Arnie.
Gotta.
Rush says, in addition to SNES repros, there's also brand new cartridges being manufactured by companies like I Am 8-Bit. Yep, absolutely.
Got their Dragon View from was it
Dragon View? Yeah,
Dragon View.
That's a totally you talk about an underappreciated Super Nintendo. That and Brandish 2, actually, which I don't think ever came here. Both great Super Nintendo games. Matthew Lynn says, Rush, I was just on their website yesterday pre-ordering Sea of Stars. I saw the carts they make really cool. Yeah, Sea of Stars is a rough subject for me, Matthew, because here's a story behind that. So I got fucked on this deal. So first and foremost, because there wasn't a physical announced yet, they didn't announce a physical retail. And again, I guess I should have figured that that's one of the bigger indie games was going to have one. But I didn't want to fucking miss out because it's the only way I play games. It doesn't exist if it's not physical to me. So I actually backed those fuckers. I backed Sabotage Studios. And so not only do I have to fucking disclose that I backed them when I do that review, I was an actual backer on the project. So that's a disclosure I have to make. But I'm going to have my game after every other fucking person on earth has their game because they did it through fucking limited run games.
So I'm in the same boat.
Every other person in the world is going to have that game before I have my game. And I have to disclose it that I backed it. But I only backed it. Like, honestly, fuck that, though. Because that was like a $64 game is what that was. Like, I spent like $60 back in that shit. So I bought the game. So whatever. I'll still disclose that it was a backer, but I bought the game. That was me buying the game.
Technically speaking, I didn't back the Kickstarter, but they opened up to the Kickstarter backers. They allowed you to, sell, like, to buy extra copies of the game. And my buddy, he said, hey, I backed this. I know you're interested in, JRPGs. Did you want a physical copy? I was like, hell yeah, I do. Get me on. Not knowing that they would put out a retail and an I Am 8-Bit version of the game months before I'm going to get mine. Like,
yeah, I'm pretty sore about that. Like, honestly.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
So then, Rush Dog says for sure, hey, Scorpio, C's Arcade is in the house. Late, but hope all you homies are good. Fantastic, Caesar. Caesar says, I just got a repro of Terra Enigma on Super Nintendo, opened it up and found legit chips inside with another soldered on top of one of them. Pretty cool. Yeah, there's a story behind that, actually, and I'm sure Rush is going to fill you in on that. Yeah, it looks like he is, yeah. So, hey, Scorpio, congrats on the Terra Enigma pickup. Hope you enjoy the trilogy. Rush says, a lot of repro carts use donor carts and then sacrifice a legit cart to make them. Yeah, that's one of the negatives to some of those repros, especially in the early days when I was buying them. It's basically they would take a actual, like if you wanted a copy of Star Ocean, for example, on the Super Nintendo, that's a specialty cart. So the only way you're getting that is for them to actually take a Super Famicom Star Ocean and then solder the EPROM of the Burn fan translation onto that, like a fucking Frankenstein fucking hack phone, basically. And that's the only way you were playing that on a Super Nintendo. So that is actually an interesting That's an interesting point. I'm glad Rush brought that up because yeah, that is true. And then Scorpio Caesar says MVG made it so my $35 Alien Resurrection or MVG made it to where my $35 Alien Resurrection is now one of my most expensive PS1 games just from a video. Laugh out loud. Yeah, that's the other part of it, and that's the content creator thing. That's where just talking about a game, like I just made a review on Yoku's Island Express. Now the good news is nobody knows who the fuck I am, so that game's not shooting up in quality because I made a fucking video on it. But don't get me wrong, if for example, like and let me see what level I'm talking about. If Super Eye Patch Wolf, if John were to make a video tomorrow about Yoku's Island Express and how amazing it is, that game's skyrocketing in value the next day. So it just depends on the size of the content creator. But yeah, got to be wary of that. Got to be wary of that because yeah, on one hand, I don't think they intend to do that. I think they're genuinely like people like Metal Jesus. I think they're genuinely excited to talk about the games.
Right. Yeah. This is exciting. I want to share this
I want
with
to
people
share
because
this
I
with
love
you,
it.
and you would never know about it maybe if Metal Jesus hadn't talked about it. But at the same
Mhm.
time, a lot of people watch Metal Jesus, and so that means that game's going up. And you're not
Right.
going to get a deal on that game anymore. So it's a double-edged sword for sure. Yeah. And let's see. Hey, Rush. I may have to miss. Okay. And then Rush Dog says, I remember back in the day, Zoo was on the hunt for Star Ocean Super Nintendo repro cart that was really hard to come by. Yes, because it needed a donor cart with a special chip. Yeah, that whole story. Yes. And then Caesar says, miss out on Star Blazers, but looking forward to playing Illusion and Terra Enigma. Yeah, you should. Those are amazing games. I have a review somewhere on the hub on both those games, Caesar. So if you want to really look at like a blast from the fucking past, go to playingwithsuperpower.com. And my old reviews are still up there, like under Mungan Zoo, actually. I did a bad job. I did a bad job of scrubbing that. Not that I could, because I don't own that site. Masamune owns that site, but that was the one piece of my past I couldn't scrub was that. So it's still there for everybody to see. All those discussions, they're a hoot to go through some of those forums too. And oh my god, like just looking at some of the ways that like your perspectives and your opinions evolve over time. Holy shit, it's fun to do because that was like a younger, more brash. That was like a 2012, fresh out of business school Zoo. And
It's like a different person. It's like talking
oh,
to a different.
it is a different person. I said some dumb. I said a lot of smart shit, but there's a lot of dumb fucking bullshit came out of that guy's mouth, like for sure. Um, Matthew Lynn says, "Nice. I've heard really good things about Terra Enigma. I have a repro, but haven't played it yet. Too much on the backlog. Yeah, I fucking know
Oh
that
yeah.
feeling.
You gotta move Terra Enigma up. It's
Yes,
move it up on the list.
100%.
It is such an incredible game.
Top 10 SNES. Top 10 SNES easily.
Easily, yeah, easily.
Top 10.
It's so good.
I literally, I don't, everybody who knows what I think of Link to the Past, I don't say this lightly. That is a Link to the Past quality equivalent. They're not the same game, and they do very different things. But in terms of the
They do, yeah.
quality, that was Quintet's. That was their Mona Lisa, man.
That was their swan song. Yeah, they knocked it out of the park.
I mean, they did the Grand Stream Saga, but I hear mixed things about that.
Yeah, I want to play that again. I played that as a teenager. I think I rented it, so I didn't get too deep into it. I would like to play it again, but I don't remember having the warmest feelings about it.
Yeah, I never had the system, so I never got to. But I remember seeing it and being on the radar.
Mm-hmm.
So many games on the radar. That original PS1. So many fucking games on the radar, but I'm stuck over here with like fucking 3D Mario 64. Like bummer. But it's but that's okay. You know what? That's okay though because we also got like Star Fox 64. Ocarina of Time was okay. And we got what was the one I really liked was me and my dad played with Shadows of the Empire and GoldenEye. The shooters on there were fantastic. Fantastic. Flying in 3D and 64-bit 3D, flying the Hoth mission in a snow speeder and doing like the tow cable. So fucking cool.
Oh yeah.
That's a memory I'll always have. You know, even though I was starting to kind of go toward PC gaming at that point, but I'll never forget
Yeah.
that.
I have a very complicated relationship with my father, but one of the core good memories I have is playing Star Fox 64
Yeah,
multiplayer with my dad
such a
and
good
a
game.
couple of other friends. Like it's just like such a fun the you could be on foot, you could be like be the little character and run around with a bazooka. Like I just love that. Love that.
Soul Blazer is crazy expensive. No worries there. Yeah. Oh, Rush, you have no idea how glad I was to get, and I thought it was expensive then, but to get my Super Nintendo collection completed by like 2012, 2013. Oh my God, that was such a good decision. In retrospect, my goodness. Hot take: Illusion of Gaia is better than Terranigma. Rush Dog says no, but I do like Illusion of Gaia. As a fan of Around the World in 80 Days in my review, I remember even back then I fucking did that. God damn it. But I kind of liken that to like a video game version of Around the World in 80 Days, where you kind of go,
Sure.
you see so many fucking amazing places in Illusion of Gaia. And Illusion of Gaia is another game that doesn't shy away from the dark side of humanity. Like you have,
There is some heavy stuff. I can't
dude,
believe some of that stuff was on an American released Super Nintendo game in
dude,
the 90s,
when you
right?
have to
Like
when you have to cook the fucking pig,
it's heavy. It is a heavy
holy
game.
shit! Like yeah, or the raft scene, or the fact that
The
you're
raft
dealing,
scene
yes,
with humans, like the human slave trade,
the
like
human
that
slave trade going on. Yeah,
there's some heavy
heavy
stuff.
stuff
And
in
it's
that
I
game.
think it's presented well. Like it's presented responsibly, but like
Yes,
the fact that it exists at all is like crazy.
given how heavy handed Nintendo was in that era, fuck.
Hmm.
Yeah, that I can't believe that game showed up. But yeah, it was great.
Hmm.
You should play the whole trilogy.
Yeah,
I still
absolutely.
love Soul Blazer the most of all, though that's fueled by nostalgia alone. Soul Blazer is a simpler game, but it does what it does really, really well. And I love the fact that like every time like you beat a monster or you clear an area of monsters, you save the soul of a person that was sold the death toll. That's what was really cool about that game. Because you have this greedy king, it's a classic story, like sold the soul of his kingdom for power, but then forgot in the deal that he was part of that. And so
Right.
every bunch of monsters you clear is rebuilding the world from scratch.
Hmm.
Quintet had an obsession with that. They literally had an obsession with the destruction and rebuilding of the world. And it
Well,
was really
that was what the trilogy was, right? Like
yes,
it was
yes.
Soulblazer,
Hmm.
Illusion of Gaia, and Terranigma were that creation of heaven and earth
Yes.
trilogy where
And
they
then
just kind of
ActRaiser, the side games. ActRaiser, man. Yeah.
just sort of explored that concept, and that like resonates with me
Uh-huh.
even more now than when I was a teenager. Like it just really just is such a compelling framing device for a story. I love it.
Well, the Hindu myths had this down. It's creation and destruction go hand in hand, man.
Hmm.
Like if to kind of view it not necessarily as the destruction of what is, but it's paving way for the creation of something new. Of course, that's of little consequence to the people being destroyed in that particular kalpa, but
I'm sure they feel very honored to be destroyed by.
yeah, when Shiva shows up and
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
to bring in the new world. Um, Caesar says, "I wish it wasn't nearly $150. Holy shit! Yeah, I
I
every
was
once
lucky that I found it for a decent price. I don't know, 5 years ago, 6 years ago.
well every once
I
in a
was
while
able to
for
get it before it peaked.
yeah every once in a while for funsies, what I'll do is I'll Google my Super Nintendo stash, like just to see where it's
Mm,
at. And oh my god, like I'll tell you what, digital putting Earthbound digital didn't do shit to that game,
right.
especially if you're like me and you have the scratch and sniff stickers.
I'm jealous of that.
Yeah, I've got the actual guy. I'll have to post pictures of that. It actually has the scratch and sniff stickers intact, and I've never scratched them because I don't want to wear them out. It's that kind of a
Mm,
thing. Also, they genuinely smell bad.
right. Yeah.
So Soul Blazer is great too. That's Size on Cold Knight's Discord's favorite as well. Yeah, Sai and I are gonna have to talk about that. I know again, I got to get more into the Discord when I can. I just don't have time. But yeah, Soul Blazer's amazing. Then Scorpio Caesar says same with Chrono Trigger, but at least that's on the DS.
Although that one's getting up there in price now too.
Pricey, yeah. Now Cho Collects has ordered my copy from 8-Bit 2, wanted to wait for the physical release, which makes sense, 100%. Caesar says there's a lot of stupid, dumb shit I said 10 plus years ago as well. We all grew up, and if it was the same person we were in those years, we wouldn't have grown at all. Yeah, my dumb shit was mainly around the supremacy of like the business world and capitalism, and you grow, you figure out that it's all bullshit, you know. But I was pretty brainwashed outside of business school. The markets. Hey, Mandy stopped in. Hey, Mandy, what's going on? Welcome in.
Hey, Mandy.
Mandy showed up. Yeah. Welcome in. Then he got, then Caesar K saying, Mandy, my Ace Attorney's sister is here. Mandy, I swear to God, it's still on the list. Right now, I'm a Trails boy, but we're definitely going to get some Ace Attorney eventually. Like, for real. It's on the list. Zoo, did you ever play Rogue Squadron on N64? Yes, I did, actually. We rented it one time, and it was fun. It was developed by Factor 5, who made Shadows. It's so good. I didn't know Factor 5 made Shadows of the Empire. Damn. And it also gets better with the GameCube sequels. Funny face.
That's what I'm most familiar with is the at least the second one.
Well, you know, GameCube's got to have something, right? So yeah, having a good sequel to Rogue Squadron, that's a pretty good deal, I'd say. Scorpio made me aware of a YouTuber known as GameCube Galaxy, and I thought that was just precious and funny. So I told him, I said, "Oh, I am now subbed to this guy, and I look forward to our future dialectic on that." That's gonna be like a Clash of the Titans, man. I can't wait. Can't wait for that guy to sell me on GameCube. Mandy says, "Hey, Caesar," and then Rush Dog. Oh, spoilers, guys. Caesar hasn't played Illusion yet. Ah, shit. Okay. Well, I hope you had earmuffs, Caesar. It's a problem with this. God dang it. It's okay, Rush. So many reviews. Oh, okay. You already watched and spoiled the Hamlet thing. Okay. And now I feel better. I was starting to feel some real guilt there.
That seems to be the first thing that anybody that talks about Illusion of Gaia talks about. So
it's so
that's
awful.
a hard one to dodge.
It's awful.
It's a hard one to dodge.
But don't spoil anything else. Yeah, we won't. Yeah. Yeah, Caesar says. And then Mandy says, I look forward to the live Ace Attorney updates. Yeah. I'm sort of doing that right now with Crossbell for sure, Mandy. Right now, there's not much to it. It's just like, man, this game looks crisp, and man, this is a fucking big city. And that's pretty much all I got for now. But tonight, I'm going to dive more in for sure. One hundo, going to dive in more for sure. So, I guess another thing I wanted to touch on, did you see, talking about the big giants into space, did you happen to see Asmongold's recent comments, are not so much about Pal World, but on surrounding Pal World? He's kind of stepped in it a couple of times now.
Is this the guy that was like ranting on the video? And I saw some video that people shared on Twitter.
There's a couple of them where he's kind of really stepped in it. Yeah.
I think I have seen at least one of the things you're talking.
Yeah, there's one where there's one about where people who want like AB body types, etc., are like freaks that need to be institutionalized. Which that was wild. I didn't expect that from Asmongold. That was wild. And then the other take that really had people up in arms was that artists don't matter. So I want to get your perspective on that real quick.
Yeah, that's the one I saw. It is a very how do I put this? It's a very consumer-minded take that is not thinking beyond its like immediate drive to consume. it's easy to think, well, it doesn't matter. Art doesn't matter because, there's so much stuff and I enjoy the stuff that's out here. I think he drew a comparison to the Marvel movies and how the directors come out, prestigious directors come out and say the Marvel movies are bad because they're low art or whatever. And he's saying, screw you. You don't like, who cares? Like, nobody cares what you think. Everybody likes this stuff.
Sure.
And I don't want to say that he's not wrong about the fact that like even something that's considered low art can still be enjoyed by a large number of people. Like that's, of course, like it's great. Like I've enjoyed Marvel movies in the past. I'm not a big Marvel fan, but I think that some of them are fun. But the idea that artists are not necessary, I don't know. It comes back to, I think, what you said that V said, like at a certain point, what do they feed into the algorithm? What do they feed into the AI if there's not artists to copy? Is it Oscar Wilde? The Oscar Wilde quote that is frequently misquoted.
All art is
imitation. Well, I was thinking more the quote, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. And this feeds into the pal world thing too, I guess. Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. People say that all the time, right?
Yes.
But that's not the quote. It's imitation is the sincerest form of flattery that mediocrity can pay to genius. It's actually a judgment against imitation, right?
Right.
It's the idea. It's the idea that like you couldn't come up with your own brilliant idea, and so you said, well, this thing is good, I'm going to do that, I'm going to just do that, right? And it's lifeless, and at a certain point, people might enjoy the spark. There may be a spark for some of these things initially, but are we going to be talking, let me ask you this, are we going to be talking about Pal World 5 years from now?
I don't
do you
think. I don't think that Pal World is the game. Let me put it that way.
Right.
So
it's huge right now.
But
it's in the zeitgeist.
If you're asking me, is it another Minecraft or another Fortnite? I don't think so.
Yeah.
If I had to guess, and I've got a pretty good gauge on this thing. I actually called both of those.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at Pal World, I think it's missing a certain something.
Exactly, and it's hard to nail down what that something is.
So I looked at Minecraft. I said that's a hit.
That's the reason that we need artists. That's the reason that this guy is wrong.
I looked at Fortnite. I said that's a hit.
You might get flashes in the pan, a game like Pal World or whatever. You may get these little moments where people are all focused in on this one thing, but it doesn't last. It doesn't leave a legacy for itself because there's nothing there once you get below that surface, right?
Well, and before any brainlets come in and say, "Well, we're talking about Pal World is a hit." Well, yeah. Let me define my.
I haven't played it.
Yeah, I mean, 50 years from now,
I haven't played
talking about the fucking game. And no, the answer is I don't think so.
And I could be wrong, and I'm using Pal World as an example, as a contemporary game. I don't know. I haven't played it. It doesn't interest me personally. No shade to the people that like it. I'm just saying,
don't have time.
I like a lot of stuff. I like a lot of stuff right now that I'm not going to care about 10 years from now. Like it's just things that interest me for the moment, and I will move on. But there are, like, if we're talking about video games, there are video games that I will play and I will move on and I'll forget about. But there are video games that I will play and they will become a part of my inner life, right?
Yes.
Like Chrono Trigger will be forever a part of my inner life. It exists in me forever now because it was made by artists that were creating a piece of art.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And like, okay, you can live in a world where there are no artists and AI creates everything, and you'll have a lot of fun experiences, but you're not enriching your inner life with those experiences. You're having a few moments of fun. Nothing wrong with that. I do that too. But
correct.
If I never had that inner person enriching experience, that's not a world that I want to live in.
No.
It
So
just doesn't.
so to pull this up real quick. So here it is. So some people, I enjoy stage 2. I enjoy art. Some people will enjoy their Swedish Fish Oreos.
Mhm.
That's the AI. That's the complete simulacrum.
Sure.
This is where I kind of like to be at with video games. Like, you're never going to be here, because what video games ultimately are is they're a reflection. It's somebody holding a mirror up to nature, somebody holding a mirror up to the world they see, and that creates this.
Mm.
Now, we get a lot of this in gaming too. We get the fishy sticks too, to be fair. But I right here is where I like to be.
Mm.
I like to be right there. No,
Yeah.
no shade to anybody who likes their Swedish Fish Oreos. But
Yeah, again, like I like my Swedish Fish Oreos sometimes too. There's plenty of things that I played that I'm like, that was fun. And then I'm never gonna think about it
right.
again. But I had a great time with it. And that there's value in that. And we
Oh,
need
sure.
that. Like those are the palate like if I got my mind blown by every game I played, I would be brain dead. I would not be able to process anything.
Yeah, I
I
just
need to
watched
have these like
Batman and Robin a week ago. It's
I
dog
need
shit, but it's kind of funny dog shit. It's good
I
time.
need those palate cleanser experiences where I can be like, that was great. What a fun time. Anyway, I need to have those. Like, and there's value in that. There's value in that.
And then let's see here. So we've got my mistake. Factor 5 did not make Shadows. That was LucasArts. My bad. Okay, that's what I figured. I figured that, but I am not an expert on the Nintendo 64, as anybody can tell you. Yep, there's a second part of that quote. And he says, yes, Brandon knows the whole quote. Love it. Yeah, there's another Oscar Wilde quote that is constantly misappropriated as well. And that is, all art is quite useless. And they leave out like the absolute page and a half of other observations he made about art that puts that into context. Like, that's literally the last piece of like a soliloquy he had prior to the picture of Dorian Gray. And again, that's in reference to the picture of fucking Dorian Gray. Like, absolutely. But they're, Oscar Wilde said all art is quite useless. Like, and they leave it at that. It's like, so maybe try reading the book outside of 8th grade, huh? So let's see here. We're forced to read it. The best video games are the ones with heart, Mandy says.
Amen.
Amen to that. 100%. Scorpio Caesar says, nothing wrong with a one-night stand, but it's just what it sounds like, a one-night stand, for lack of a better analogy. It's a perfect analogy.
I like that. Yeah, that makes sense.
Referring to the AI games, of course. Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, shit. It's after 10. I want to give you an opportunity real quick. Did you have any questions you want to ask for me, or anything you want me to expand on?
Oh man, I did going into it, but it would take us down a completely different rabbit hole.
That's okay.
That we don't have time to go down.
That's okay.
I'm gonna try to think of. I'm gonna try to think. Well, I'm also like I've had so much cognac tonight that I'm fairly cognizant.
Fair enough. We can save it. Write it down. We'll save it for round 3.
We'll do a round 3, and I'll come with so many that I'll just be leading the interview, and
that's fine. Yeah, that's good.
That'll be great.
The reversal. But all right, but yeah, you said you might have had a smaller one though.
Oh, I could think of one. Maybe. Can I think of one?
We'll give it a minute.
Okay. Well, you don't care about the Switch 2. I know you don't care about the Switch 2.
Not at all.
Well, let me ask you this. This is one I was thinking about earlier today.
They're gonna fuck it up, Brandon. They're gonna fuck it up. It's Nintendo.
Well, of course they will. They've got a pretty bad track record.
They're gonna fuck.
What would be the situation where you would see that Nintendo would be well advised to release a new console?
In this fucking world, in this current macroeconomic environment,
I mean, you create your own. Like, what does the world look like? What does the situation look like where it's in Nintendo's best interest to do?
Oh my God! Like, not like this. put it that way. We would need to have we would need to have population growth that was going in a positive direction instead of a negative direction. We would need to have an economy that wasn't built on funny money and speculation, which is in its absolute peak right now. I can't even make a fucking profit on sector rotation, on sector rotating into fucking commodities futures in the spring because of all the funny money propping up this fucking economy right now. It is ridiculous. I've had to actually sector rotate into tech, which is insane. But tech is actually doing well now, which actually that's not even how it should be right now. That's how insane this is. And that's a whole nother can of worms. Like the whole sector. That's, by the way, not financial advice, folks. Trust me, you don't want to take financial advice from me the last fucking quarter and a half anyway. Losing my ass, but we would need it would help if we had the Panama Canal not fucking withering and dying. It would help if we didn't have an entire Red Sea blocked by the Houthis right now. It would help if we didn't have the Suez Canal also having a drying epidemic to where ships aren't going to be able to move through there in 2 years. All of this is going to create incredible shortages. You just got to read. You got to read the macroeconomic room. It's just like when Sony and Microsoft decided, you know what, a great fucking idea. Let's put out a console in the middle of a pandemic with a part shortage. That sounds like a great idea. It's kind of the same thing, and now it's Nintendo's turn. Like Nintendo is about to release a console right as everything fucking pops off. And
let me ask you this then. With all that being said,
yeah.
If we had a world that answered all of those, that solved all those problems,
if we were in the fucking 90s again, yeah.
If we were right, but there was still a preceding console with the level of popularity of the Switch. Does any successor have any chance?
No, because what you get is a Super Nintendo. Yeah, you get the Super Nintendo.
It doesn't, because while we in our, as gamers or whatever on the internet, we're in our circles, right? We see, we follow the people on Twitter that we follow because we agree with them typically.
Right. Yeah.
We are in our little information bubble, and we think, yeah, everybody's excited for the new console, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's true. I think the vast majority of people that own a Switch are the same people that bought a Wii and are like, I don't need, like, my Wii still works.
You're describing me, Brandon.
I don't need a bunch of new games. Like we have a game. We have a Nintendo at home. What do we need this new console for? So here's
the question for you. And you know the answer because you're in executive leadership. If the product is just a redundant sustaining innovation at best and a weird bizarre fucking thing at worst, it's going to turn the market cold. Why release a fucking console? Why do it?
Well, there are a few different factors beyond just the consumer side that I think you have to consider.
Well, there's the business.
One is
that's exactly what I'm looking at.
Well, there's the business side, but one of the things is there are dependencies that Nintendo can't directly control. There is the dependency of the third-party developer that they have to consider. They have to. Like they're foolish not to. They made that mistake in the Wii U, and they paid the price for it. No third-party developers wanted to make games for that system. Nintendo made some bangers.
I can't imagine why.
Nintendo put out some bangers on the Wii U, but that system had no third-party support, and that was Nintendo's fault. So if Nintendo is pressured by third-party developers to put out a system with more power, that's something they need to consider. They have to consider it. It's they are dependent. They've learned, I think, now after the Wii U, they are dependent on third-party developers if they want to have a successful business, the level of success that they want to have anyway.
Well, I mean, to an extent, but third-party developers only matter when the games are good.
Well, certainly, but you're not going to get any games, let alone good games, if there's no support there at all. And I think, developers have shown that even though they don't have the track record at the level of Nintendo necessarily, Nintendo hardly misses. they do a pretty darn good job of putting out quality games. But
It's been.
over
I'll tell you, in this era, yeah, it's fuck. I can't even. I don't even. Maybe Kirby Star Allies. Maybe
yeah, I mean, and
that's
there's
not
a
the only.
spectrum
That's about the
within
only one. Like they have
even
really knocked it out of the
within
fucking park.
Nintendo. Even within Nintendo, there's a spectrum, but I would argue that their worst game is still mediocre. You know what I mean? It's not. It doesn't fall to the level of some of these games.
I don't know. Other M and Wii Music were pretty fucking bad.
Well, yeah. I mean, that was first party published, first party property, but wasn't that Team Ninja?
Well, Team Ninja. Well, hot take. Team Ninja gets the blame for that. No, the blame for that is Ishio Sakamoto. Go and listen
Sakamoto.
to dude.
I have a
the bizarre fucking interviews that dude did about Samus. Oh my god, I knew
my
I called that game being a fucking piece of shit from the beginning. Like when he's talking about maternal instincts and the fucking baby Metroid. What the fuck are you talking about? What the fuck are you talking about, homie?
My upcoming video next week has a shout out to Mr. Sakamoto.
Yeah, hopefully it's got a scrub brush attached.
Okay, but yeah, but point being, there's the dependency of the third party that they have to consider if they want to have a successful business. There is the hardcore fan expectation that they have to address. At a certain point, their most fervent, ardent supporters, their whales, if you will, have an expectation of continuous improvement, even if it is just sustaining innovation, right?
Right.
But if they want to achieve, I think, the most success that they can hope to, and they're not going to touch the Switch with a Switch 2. They're not going to touch that level of success. They have to put that idea out of their minds.
So
but if they want to have a reasonably
so your proposition basically is that this is a sustaining innovation to kind of tread water and weather the macroeconomic storm coming.
It's a bridge.
Okay.
The Wii U was a bridge to the Switch. The GameCube was a bridge to the Wii. They're not going to knock two consoles out of the park.
They never do.
It's just not going to happen.
Never do.
Almost never. The only exception to that rule, I think, is like the PlayStation 1 and the PlayStation 2. There was still significant growth going into the PlayStation 2.
Sony in general, I will give Sony this: they know how to market and sell a video game console.
They do. I mean, the PlayStation 3 was a dip, but playing the long game,
they recovered.
But playing the long game with the PS3, they did eventually reach parity with the competition. It just took longer, right? But they did pull it off. But my point, I think, still stands that there are these bridge consoles that happen every other generation, basically, where the hardcore fans adopt the new console because that's what we do. We adopt. We're the early adopters. I'm not speaking for you. I'm speaking for myself.
Sure.
The early adopters. Well, yeah, I'm there day one for whatever you're putting out. But the vast majority, or at least the majority, are not. They don't need a Switch 2. They have a Switch at home. They're good for now.
Well, and I'll tell you, I'm a weird anomaly because on one hand, like I buy like a hardcore fan, but at the same time, in terms of console buying, I'm like the more tentative fan. It's so weird because here's the thing: like you're right, I'm like them in a lot of ways, but then the average gamer who's not going to buy a Switch 2 doesn't have 450 fucking Switch games.
It's true. Like you are an anomaly in the sense that you read like the early adopter hardcore, but you are like console averse, shall we say?
Yeah, that's strange. Yeah,
and that's they're not factoring you into their plans.
No,
right?
I'm an outlier.
That's atypical for what they're expecting.
Yes,
but and I'm sure they know this. Like this bridge console, there needs to be something there to, like you said, tread water, keep the ship afloat. They can maximize the amount of success they can have with this water treading console they can provide full backwards compatibility to the Switch library.
That's going to help.
They can do more. They can do more with the online space. Nintendo famously kind of in third place as far as like online, in
online.
general.
Yeah, that can draw some of the hardcore crowd. And then
it doesn't matter to me as much.
And then for me,
it's important to a lot of people.
You asked me what it would take. A real fucking 2D Mario game. They were so close with Wonder.
So they need to. There's certain things that they can do for this Switch too that will put them in a very strong position going into whatever comes next.
Yeah.
Because at that point, when this third console comes out, the people that have the Switch that weren't interested in upgrading are more like, okay, yeah, it's probably time. It's been 15 years.
And then of course you should see the macroeconomic headwinds getting a little less dicey. That's the hope. By the time the next console comes out, that's the hope.
But if they're basing their projections around this idea that they're going to release a new console and they're going to see the same level of success or greater, they're going to expect greater. Their shareholders are going to expect greater that they saw with the Switch. They're setting themselves up for disappointment because the market just doesn't exist. There are not enough people.
Well, I hate to tell you, homie, the doctrine of infinite growth.
Well,
that's and again, and that's one of the things. Like the entire way we do things is so fucking divorced from reality. Because you're right, they're not going to achieve that, but the shareholders are still going to expect it.
You're going to expect it, yeah.
But I think you're right. I think the point you're making here, and it's something that I haven't considered, is they don't get that whether they stay with the Switch or what. They're kind of fucked either way.
Right.
They're kind of screwed.
They're in an unwinnable situation. They're in a truly unwinnable situation.
A victim of their own success.
Shift. Yeah. Yep. And it's happened. Okay. It's happened multiple times over the course of their history. So it shouldn't be a surprise to them, but it's still going to be a surprise to them.
Oh yeah, for sure. Because no, that's interesting. Thank you for sharing that. That's good perspective, actually. I never thought about that because my entire idea is okay. Like the things are going to get, and again, it's prefaced that I could be wrong. It's okay to be wrong. Could be wrong, but things are going to get so fucking bad here in a few years. Things are going to get so bad that they're probably better off just trying to weather it with the old faithful, and that given enough economic pain points, the third parties will have no choice but to continue to release even lesser offerings on the Switch. But I don't know. You never know. Maybe things clear up. I don't see it happening, but I'm a pessimist by nature. I am a pessimist.
I want to say I would love to be wrong. I would be so happy to be incorrect.
Absolutely.
And the Switch 2 comes out and everybody loves it and it's a greater success even than the Switch. Yes, sign me up for that. You can tar and feather me in the public square if you want to. Like I would be so glad if that happened. But I just don't think it is based on history and like you said, the conditions that we are living in and are projected to continue to be living in for the next several years.
Yeah, we've got it doesn't look like it looks like it's getting worse. Like on a global macroeconomic level. And that leaves all the current events out of it. I'm looking at future projections. I'm not even looking at the absolute hellscape this currently is right now.
Right.
In terms of just holy shit. Like I'm seeing shit I never in my life thought I'd see, and that's right now, let alone in fucking 5 years.
Right. Yeah. Who knows? What horrors await?
Oh fuck. So let's see here. So Batman and Robin, Caesar says is so bad it's good. Yeah. It's one of those movies that's the epitome of dog shit. I think Jeremy John said it, like Batman and Robin is the epitome of dog shit, but it's kind of funny dog shit. and then Caesar says, looking forward to catching what I missed on the drive home tomorrow. Great podcast, fellas. That means the world, man.
Thanks, Caesar.
Like if like that means the world to me. Like if I can pop on here and drunkenly have a conversation with another person and that entertains people, that's can't ask for much more. And have a good conversation to boot. Let's see. Wait a second, Mandy says Wii Music is a banger.
I'll say I have not experienced Wii Music.
What
I missed
drivel?
That entirely.
What drivel is this?
I missed that boat entirely.
So Wii Music killed the Wii, Mandy.
Like, I'm familiar with it as a concept. I've seen
Wii Music heralded the return. You can get so creative with it. Oh, well, I'm sure you can, but interesting. When you and Tony, or when you or Tony come on, we're gonna have to touch on that, man. Because here's and part of me is looking at like a stick up my ass business executive perspective. That fucking thing killed the Wii. That heralded in the software direction that was the doom to the Wii. Because we had Wii Music. That was followed up by fucking Mario Galaxy 2, which was followed up by Metroid Other Mom Metroid, which was followed up by fucking Skyward Sword. Like, that was the start. That was the start of the absolute train wreck that was the second half of the Nintendo Wii. Like,
I'll have to listen to your conversation because I don't follow that train myself.
Oh, the bad. Well, I mean, look at the sales of all those games. That's all you got to do.
Oh well, sure.
That's all you got to do. I'm not speaking for quality. I'm speaking for sales. Like, it's nobody fucking wanted a sequel to Mario Galaxy. Fucking nobody. Mario Galaxy shows up on a system of 110 million people and sells 10 million copies. With population growth, that is a negative for Mario 64. It did outperform Sunshine, but macroeconomically, huge downturn from Mario 64. 10 million to 10 million, given a span of 10 years. Terrible, terrible fucking performance. Skyward Sword almost killed the Legend of Zelda series. Literally, it's like 3 million on that install base. Fucking terrible. Now, part of that is because if other games sucked, it's not Wii Music's problem. That's fair. I'm going to get to Wii Music. I'm going to get to Wii Music in a second. Other M literally killed Metroid. Now, you might be saying, Zoo, well, aren't we getting Metroid Prime 4? Didn't we get Metroid Dread? Yeah, look at how those games sold. Look at the population growth since. Not convinced Metroid's still not a zombie franchise. As good as those games are. We will see. We'll see what Prime 4 does. But Metroid Dread, 3 million copies in 1986. Metroid did 2.87 million. In 2001, Metroid Prime did 2.73 million. No, I reversed those. 2.73 million for OG Metroid, 2.8 something for Metroid Prime in 2001. And in fucking 2023, with the fucking Switch's install base, that game does 3 million. Terrible. A great game, terrible performance. Like, I just feel like that's a zombie franchise, and I blame Other M for that. That destroyed Samus's character almost totally. It was terrible. Wii Music. I just, it's smug. Not a great argument. Anyway, I will elaborate on Wii Music at a future date when I am less drunk. It is the most inoffensive of the 4 games I named.
Unfortunately, I don't have anything to add because I haven't, like I said, I haven't experienced it.
I'll have to think about that. But yeah, I just remember nobody bought it. That's when as an investor, I remember nobody bought it.
Oh, right, because you were investing in Nintendo back then, right?
Yes. Yeah, that was I had a front row seat to that whole fucking second half shit show, man. I still remember my first experience with Wii Music was my brother-in-law using the cheerleader pom-poms and his me going arg, arg, arg to the Zelda theme. That's pretty funny. That's pretty funny. Caesar, that's pretty funny. Again, man, Mandy, please note, I've never played Wii Music, full disclosure. Never played it. I can't speak to it as a consumer product. I can only speak to what it did. And watching those Wii numbers go from the peak, which was New Super Mario Brothers, selling out in the middle of an economic recession, to whatever the fuck those 4 games I named did to the Wii. Like, there were some bright spots. Like, you had Kirby's Return to Dreamland. You had, I think, Punch Out came out in that era, which we need another fucking Punch Out. We'll never get it. We'll never fucking get it in this current socio-political climate, ever. But they could do a Punch Out and make it politically correct. Like, just make us a fucking Punch Out. I don't care what you have to do.
What was the install base of the NES in America?
Install base in NES, I'd have to look it up globally. So in NES, keep in mind this is 1986. So macroeconomics again are just completely different. You had a cold market right after the Atari crash. You had a console ban in China. You had an iron curtain that basically we couldn't sell to in Eastern Europe and Russia. So most of the world, big huge chunk of the world, completely cut off from Nintendo.
Sure.
You had a cold, like I said, cold market. Nobody knew what the fuck a Mario or a Zelda was. Nobody knew what a Nintendo was. Literally had the Trojan horse their way into toy stores with the Rob the Robot and
Right.
do it as a toy, not a console. It ended up selling around 64 million copies. Keeping in mind for population growth, that's a massive. If you do the population growth, it's probably getting close to double that if you adjust for population increase. And again, that's not and I always do this because I know Caesar, I know you're listening. Got to be careful doing that because that's a very, very crude way to show a macroeconomic analysis. So there's
Well,
so much
so we
more.
know that. So if we say an install base of 64, whatever it is,
64
million,
yeah.
Adjusting, and adjust it if you want to adjust it for population.
No competition really.
But that's my question is like, the Sega Master System existed.
Barely. Yeah, in Europe
but
mainly.
but like, did it? You know what I mean? Like, I didn't know the Sega Master System.
Not in most markets, no.
I didn't know it was a thing. I'm just trying to think, like,
that's a positive. That's what I'm talking about. Like when I say population growth, I use that to illustrate the uselessness of, and this is the only way you utilize this. So Caesar, this is the right way to utilize this because I want to make sure you're using this in ways that don't get you in trouble on Twitter. So when you use the macroeconomic pop increase analysis, what you're doing is you're using that to show the futility of direct comparisons across decades. That's it. Because even though population increase, that's a global population increase. There's three main markets in the world of gaming. There's Japan, Europe, United States. Those are the three big markets. So if you really wanted to do that, you would have to look at the specific population increase for those three regions, which I'm not doing. I'm not. If I'm going to do that much of a fucking macroeconomic analysis, somebody's going to fucking pay me. But
I'm just wondering, like, because, like, I've heard the discussions around the macroeconomic principles of population growth, among other things.
Right.
And the thing that's always
there's a million of them.
There's a lot of things that go into it. The thing that's always confused me, or maybe confused isn't the right word, but just is like, giving me pause, is the idea of there being an otherwise level playing field, when I don't know if that's necessarily the case. Like, so
okay,
the NES, obviously we have 64 million install base. Its closest competitor at that time being the Sega Master System.
Sega Master System, which was negligible.
2 million, whatever it was, like nothing. Nobody had it.
Negligible, yeah.
So if we say that they had a 2 million, I don't know how many they had, a 2 million install base, and a 64 million install base for the NES, that means we have a 66 million base of customers for video games, right? And typically households don't have more than one console, at least, especially back.
Not that, and you just hit on another one: multi-console ownership, which increases that's another one
as time goes on.
Gamers getting older. Gamers getting older, having more disposable income. Another macroeconomic factor in favor of when things go forward.
So I think about Metroid, the original Metroid, selling 3 million or sub 3 million.
2.73 million is what it sold in
2.73. Let's say 3 million for the ease of rounding.
Sure.
So we have an install base or a sell through rate of, what is that, 5% roughly? 4.5%.
I'd have to do the math, but yeah, that's gonna be ballpark, yeah.
Something like that. So 5% of the folks who said, I am a Nintendo customer. This is the console that I want to play. I choose this console. Now, I don't know, like, what was the GameCube's install base?
20 some odd million.
20 something odd million. So significantly smaller than the NES.
Correct.
At the time, what did we have? The PlayStation 2?
Had the DVD player sold 155 million.
Yeah, and I mean, of course, that's lifetime, so I don't know what it was at
And
the
even
point when.
yeah, well, just for the sake again, and this is why you need to do like an inverse yield curve, things of that nature. The main thing, this
Mhm.
again, whenever you're doing macroeconomic comparisons that I'm doing on Twitter, they're very rough and they're to demonstrate a broader point. So I need to
Sure,
make
sure,
that
sure.
very clear. This isn't to
Right, and
yeah,
I'm not necessarily trying to poke holes in anything.
right.
I'm trying to
No,
gain a greater understanding of it.
yeah. So
So,
and let me see if I can steelman your position here because I think I know where you're getting at here. So and it's a good argument. Essentially, what you're saying is that with the GameCube having 20 million, would the 3 million that Metroid Prime sold not be as impressive or more so impressive than the OG Metroid selling 2.73 million on an install base of 64
right, if we're talking a percentage of people who say I am a Nintendo customer,
million?
which those are the people that stuck with the GameCube, right? Rather than
Right.
getting, willed away by the wiles of the PlayStation and the Xbox. There's a 12 or 13% of that install base said, Metroid, I like you.
hmm
Um, I'm into you. And in that climate, right? You have the PlayStation 2, which is killing everybody. It's not
Yeah,
even
yeah.
fair.
The 1-2
Um,
punch of the backwards compatibility with Grand Theft Auto
mhm.
3.
And you have the Xbox, which was, a new player on the scene. But at the time, you also had the Dreamcast, right? Like the
hmm
Dreamcast, the Sega was still technically in
So
the
you have
game,
so you have four consoles dividing the
which
exact
is
yes
the only time that's happened,
yeah
right? Where we've had four significant players in the
but it's a
space.
lot of
So
division with Sony
it's
eating
so much
most of it.
division. Sony gobbling up the vast
Yes.
majority of the space, but it's such a strange, like, I guess my thought process on it, just to make the counter argument that I don't necessarily think that Metroid is a zombie franchise, is that uh, the franchise is as strong as its fan base, and I don't necessarily see a percentage of Nintendo fans, people who identify as I'm a Nintendo fan, decreasing. Like, I mean, I guess you could make the argument with the Switch, right? What'd you say it sold 3 million? Dread,
3 million on the Switch, and also the Metroid Other M sold less than 1 million on the Wii. Yeah, those are
right?
steep declines.
I mean, there's something to
I
be
don't,
said about
I don't
Metroid
think you.
Other M,
Yeah, I don't think you can argue that Prime One was a decline. I think you can
right?
argue that it either kept pace, maybe even slightly increased.
Other
If you
M,
factor
Other
everything.
M, you have to also consider, like, the franchise alone is not enough. Maybe there are franchises where the franchise alone is enough to carry it.
Metroid, not
Metroid
one.
is clearly not one of them, because Other
Correct.
M was not a good game
Ugh,
by most people's
ugh.
estimations. I tried to play it, I didn't get very far.
Yeah, it's a stinker.
Um, and so it sold accordingly, and that's telling. Um, Now, Dread, what I'm wondering is, did they is that 3 million physical sales, or is that 3 million across physical and digital?
So we know the sell-through rate is right now 3 million because Nintendo doesn't initially report their digitals, but then in the future, when they actually do their financial breakdowns, you'll get the digital sales too. So that's total
So we don't.
sales that we know of through I think their last financials, which was oh shit, when was that? Wanting to say November was the last time.
So did
Because
Dread
because
had
we're
been
gonna get
out
them.
for.
Yeah, we're gonna get them in February. So yeah, November was the last financials.
Okay, okay, yeah. I'm just wondering, like, if what numbers we're not seeing. No, not that's to say I haven't played Dread myself. I don't know if it's good. I don't know if it's bad.
OJ's been tracking it. He doesn't think he doesn't think it gets to 4 million lifetime. I
Okay,
guess it's
okay,
really slowed, I guess, but which is sad
okay.
because here's the thing, like it really breaks my heart because Dread is fucking amazing. That's an
Mhm.
amazing game. So makes me sad,
Yeah,
but
it's a bummer to see that. So I don't know if I would say that I think it's necessarily a zombie franchise. Maybe it's on life support. You know,
life support's good. Yeah,
um,
I can go with
four
that.
four million 4 million sales isn't nothing. But again, if we're looking at install bases, if that's my argument,
Well, and compared to
um,
Prime and compared to OG Metroid. Like it's
Right.
just it's a
The
sad,
the
sad thing.
percentage is terrible, right? It's
Yeah,
terrible. Um, on the other hand, Metroid has always been a more hardcore series.
correct. And that's one thing that is worth noting. So one of the things, even back then, like if you look at Metroid, yeah, Metroid sold 2.73 million, but look at Zelda. Zelda sold 6 million. Mario sold 40 fucking million. Mario 3 sold 30 million, not even with an attached console. Like, you're talking insane numbers for Mario Mania. So compared to the heavy hitters, even back then, Metroid was niche. And
Mhm.
Metroid's niche is a very important niche, and that is it is Nintendo's Defender 2 cabinet. You go in the arcade and you're gonna see arcade cabinets, you're gonna see the fun arcade cabinets up front that everybody plays. But in the back, there's a smoke-filled corner where the hardcore enthusiasts are around Defender 2. And that's basically what Metroid was for Nintendo. That's why it literally came, the NES Advantage controller came packaged with Metroid
Mm.
originally. Like it was sold in tandem with the Metroid Advantage controller, which was an arcade stick. So it was meant to be that prestige game, that hardcore hard game, and it was. That game was fucking hard. Like,
Mhm.
and to be fair, I guess if I want to be fair about it, Super Metroid also was a huge decline. Super Metroid wasn't successful, but then again, like Sega was fucking intense competition. Like that's what makes Prime
Sure.
impressive is they had very intense competition with the DVD player and they still beat it, or they still not
Mhm.
beat it, but they made it able to sell almost 3 million copies in that environment in the wake of fucking Halo and Grand Theft Auto. Like, get the fuck out of
Mhm.
here. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting to me. Like, I'm not a Metroid fan myself. I've played a little bit of Super Metroid, played a little bit of Metroid Prime. Um, so I don't have any skin in the game as far as that goes. But it's just interesting to me to think about, like, how do we measure success? And like, I don't we
One
haven't gotten
hundred
to it yet in
percent.
the chat, but Rush Dog said a franchise can survive if it has a modest but consistent fan base. And I think that's true. And it's like the question then becomes, how much is it worth to Nintendo to keep X
and
franchise
and
alive?
that's and that's where Metroid survives. Like that's the thing.
Mhm.
Like, and I guess that's why we shouldn't say it's a zombie franchise because Nintendo needs Metroid because again, Metroid is that hardcore experience. And it got away from
Yeah.
that. Part of Super's failure, and I love Super, but Super was too fucking easy. I said that back in the Super Nintendo days. It's too fucking easy of a
Mhm.
game. Um, Dread is not too easy. Dread is a hard game. Like
Yeah.
if you
Mhm.
watch Jay from Cold Nights play it, like that game's fucking hard. And
Yeah.
so it really brought that niche back, and it's an important thing that Metroid does for Nintendo. Basically, anybody who wants to scream kitty at Nintendo, you can kindly point them at Metroid. 100%.
To me, the Nintendo franchise that feels the most like a zombie is Star Fox. Unfortunately,
Oh,
I
Star
love Star
Fox is
Fox.
dead, like sadly, because
But Star Fox has been, every time they bring it back, they essentially are just reanimating the corpse of Star
64.
Fox, the
Yeah,
original,
it's
or
bad.
64, more accurately.
And even
Every
64 was Star Fox.
was a remake of Star Fox.
Uh huh.
They just keep reanimating the same thing over and over and over
Which is
with like
sad, man,
a
because
different gimmick.
there is so
And
much you could do with those characters and
you
with
could
that.
you could it's like one of their most interesting universes, and
Yes.
fun cast of
Like
characters. They could do
it's your
so much with
hey
Star Fox.
assholes, it's your Star Wars. Do something with it.
Right. You've got a fun, like, anthropomorphic animal Star Wars universe here. Like, don't
Yes.
just remake
Come
Star Fox
on,
again.
man. But yeah, so let's see here. We got the Wii music. That's peak gaming, Mandy says, Wii music. Uh and then yes, Caesar says it was hilarious, and then we never played it again. Thank you. That's what I'm talking about, Caesar. Never played it again. But it got an awesome hollow foil box art. God damn it. Now he's gonna get me with the hollow foil. He knows that's a weakness of mine. Worth pointing out that Wii Music sold poorly during a time when music games were incredibly popular. That too. Thank you, Rush Dog. I didn't. I'm too drunk to think of that, but that's also a point I make a lot. Is Rock Band and Guitar Hero were at their peak, and Wii Music still fucking bombed. And then Rush Dog says, "I want them to make woke Punch Out. I want them to make fucking any Punch Out. You can make it woke. You can make it politically incorrect. I don't give a fuck what they do. Just make me a fucking Punch Out game." Like, yeah, I'll do Woke Punch Out. Like, yeah, 100%. Like that'll give the fucking that fucking idiot potato man that screaming about Starfield. I'll give him something to cry about. So yeah, anything does that, that's fine. Like give that guy something to scream about performatively. Like yeah, that's more entertainment for me, more food for my family. Cool. Like yeah, Caesar. I like getting into trouble on Twitter. Yeah, me too, Caesar. But I just want to make sure I don't want to see you get into a I don't want to see you get it over your head there because like if you do purely pop, like for example OJ for an example from Player Wrestling, somebody who knows what they're really talking about. If you just go at him with just pure pop increase, he's gonna tear you apart, man. You gotta start to do a little. You gotta start to layer in other macroeconomics like Brandon's doing here, because otherwise, yeah, OJ will tear you up. I always tend to tag you in those type of tweets anyway because I'm wrong, so you can. Yeah, that's fine. That works perfect. And just avoid OJ on it. Yeah, you're the expert here, Zoo. I'm just piggybacking on what I've learned from you from Liquored Up and Live, and that's fine. I just don't want you like this is about the worst place in the world you can get an economic education. I'm drunk as fuck. I do know my shit, but like, yeah, we're drunk, but it's all in good fun, like for sure. And then yeah, Rush Dogs as a franchise can survive. It has the modest but consistent fan base. Historically, Kirby has consistently sold 1 to 3 million per game. Yeah, Kirby blew up though too. Kirby and Pikmin. Like, by the way, if you would have told me a franchise that I never would have fucking thought was going to blow up, Pikmin, man. Arlo finally got what he wanted. Arlo finally got his wish. Like, Pikmin is big deal now, which is or Fire Emblem also. Like, there's been a lot of the Switch has been kind to a lot of Nintendo's franchises. So I don't know. Maybe OJ will be wrong, and we'll get that Metroid Dread Spike that him and I both really want because he's also a Metroid fan. But I don't know. We'd like to see. But all righty. Well, I think that's it for. Oh wait, we got Pikmin 4 is a banger, top 5 Switch game. And then I'd say is what Rush Dog says, which yeah, Pikmin. I had more fun with Pikmin 4 than I had with Tears of the Kingdom. Like I'm not even gonna lie. Mandy says I'd say Wii Music was less of a rhythm game and more of a production game, which admittedly is not a popular genre. Now that's an interesting take. Let me think about that for a second. Mandy, if you're still waiting, if you can expand on that a little bit for me while I think about that. But yeah, just keep Miyamoto away from the next Star Fox, Caesar said. Well, I'll tell you what, Caesar, there is no danger of that happening. Miyamoto has been hands off the entire Nintendo Switch's lifetime. You can tell the console bores the man to tears. Like you can tell he's just not interested because it doesn't do something fucking weird and it's not a commercial failure. So Miyamoto doesn't care. He's making theme parks and he's making theme parks and he's living his best life. And you know what I say to that? Good. Let some new blood come into these franchises. Let some new ideas pour through. Look at Wonder. It did dividends for that. I'm all for Miyamoto semi-retiring into theme parks, and because I think personally, I respect Miyamoto immensely, but I think Miyamoto in his later years has been an immense creative block to Nintendo.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not trying to be rude to the guy. The guy is brilliant, but
yeah.
I don't think. I think game development largely is for the young. Richard Garriott said that famously when he was asked about future games. It's best left to the young and the creative. I don't. I think Miyamoto is best as a mentor and a fosterer of talent at this point. I think he's done a fantastic job of that. But I'm not necessarily heartbroken to see him ride off into the sunset of theme parks and movies.
And he's a great brand ambassador. You know,
yes, that too.
He's a representative of like everything that Nintendo has meant to so many people for so long. But it's time for him to, fully hand over the reins to people that are willing to take risks that he's just not interested in taking.
Yes. 100%. Caesar says, I thought I was good at Metroid. Dread made me humble old country way. Yeah, Dread'll beat the fuck out of you. And then Caesar says, Wii Music and Star Fox Zero show what happens when you give Miyamoto too much power. Yeah, Miyamoto, I mean, to be fair, the man's done a lot of hits, but those were misses. Those were big swing and a miss. Both of those. And I would argue Pikmin also was for years, but I don't know. I mean, given enough time in the oven, look at what Pikmin did, to be fair.
Mm-hmm.
And then Mandy says you get to record music covers in your own style, choosing each instrument, tempo, etc. And I think that's what makes it interesting, more so than actual playing of the instruments.
Interesting.
Well, hot damn that.
Yeah, like I said, I have no experience with that. I never.
I don't either. But Mandy just literally gave the best argument I've ever heard in favor of Wii Music.
Mm-hmm.
Like that is actually more interesting to me, and that and more novel as well, because that would separate it from some of those other music games that we mentioned.
And it definitely didn't feel like it was sold to me that way, right? Like I never got that.
Yeah, they did market it as
advertising.
they did market it as a music game. Yeah, and maybe that was a marketing miss. Then. I mean, it's possible.
I think it was maybe a marketing miss. Yeah.
That's possible. Yeah. Which would kind of eliminate some of the vitriol I have for the game itself, for sure. If that's the case, because marketing can fuck up too, for sure. And then Caesar King said he earned his flowers for sure. Bless him. Miyamoto had legit bangers in his heyday. And Mandy says, interesting. Yeah, because the marketing was. I'll have to go back and watch some of the marketing, but I think you're right, Brad. I think it was marketed as more of a not necessarily Guitar Hero, but certainly a Rock Band style game. Yeah. All righty. Well, shit. I think the chat's finally tapped out. I think we're probably more than tapped out. What do you think, Brandon? Should we call it?
Maybe we should. Yeah.
So I got one last question in that case for you. Save the best question for last. Before we kick the chat out.
Had a great time.
And he already preempted me. Yep, absolutely. All righty. Well, I'll tell you what. We're going to go ahead and we're going to end the chat. Again, thank you so much for coming out and having a good time with us. We appreciate it. Brandon, shout out one last time where they can all find you. Act like they don't know.
I'm Brandon from JustTheGems, and I'm on YouTube at JustTheGems, and come watch my JRPG content.
Trails guy. All right. Love you guys now. So you guys, again, I'll see you on the other side. Love y'all. Now get the fuck out of here.
Peace out.